Hello everyone, my name is Rose, and this is my story. My mother-in-law, Sherry, is a vain and shallow woman. She wasn't always like this. Her behavior changed later in life, or at least that's what my husband Dylan says. Dylan and Sherry didn't grow up rich. They lived a modest life together after Dylan's father passed away when Dylan was just 4 years old. Since then, Sherry became the one who earned money for the family. They lived simply until Dylan got a great job after college. Dylan is a very smart and kind man, and I'm not just saying that because he's my husband. He got a full scholarship to medical school and became a doctor. After that, Sherry started living a luxurious life, while Dylan remained humble. The reason I'm telling you all this is that I still don't understand how and why Sherry became so shallow. I don't have a job for several reasons that I'll explain later, but that doesn't mean I'm poor or depend on others for help. Somehow, Sherry got the wrong idea about me when we first met. I'm not sure if it was my clothes or how I acted, but Sherry didn't like me from the start. When we first met, Sherry said to Dylan, "Is this the girl you've been talking about? She's so plain and average. Why would you choose someone like her? Does she even have a job?" I introduced myself. "My name is Rose, Sherry. No, I don't have a job." Sherry quickly interrupted, "Just as I thought. You're planning to trap my son and take all his money. I know women like you, you're nothing but gold diggers and parasites. Don't think you can fool me." Dylan tried to defend me, saying, "Mom, that's so rude. You don't even know Rose. She's a great person from a great family. You have no right to talk to her like that." Sherry responded, "Dylan, how can you speak to me like that? I'm only trying to protect you. You can't ruin our family's name by marrying this classless woman. You need to raise your standards. It's clear she doesn't match our social or economic status." This led to a big argument between Dylan and Sherry right in front of me. Dylan was getting really angry, so we decided to leave. On our way home, Dylan apologized for his mother. He said, "I'm so sorry, Rose. My mom doesn't know how to act like a sane person anymore. I know her words hurt you." I replied, "It's not your fault, Dylan, but your mom seems like a horrible lady. Please don't worry, but I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable around her." Dylan explained, "Rose, you know she's the only parent I have left. We don't have much extended family either. I can't cut her off completely. I'll never push you to be friends with her, but can you at least be civil around her?" I agreed. "I can be respectful towards your mom, Dylan, but I don't think she can do the same." Dylan assured me, "Don't worry, Rose. I'll keep her in check. If her behavior gets worse, we can consider going low contact or something. I love my mom, but I also love you. I won't let her keep harassing you." I was a little unsure about how things would go between Sherry and me. Dylan promised he'd stand up for me, but I still felt uneasy. Dylan and I got married 3 years after we started dating. We had a small court wedding because we were short on money. You might wonder why. Well, Dylan was sending a lot of money to Sherry every month because of her emergencies. Even after we got married, Dylan kept giving his mother a large amount of money every month. It started affecting our finances, but I didn't stop him. I thought he had the right to help his mom. However, Sherry was becoming a big problem for me. She often talked badly about me and gossiped with her friends, telling everyone I was a gold digger. I usually ignored these comments, but it was starting to hurt my reputation. Sherry also never treated me nicely, despite Dylan's efforts to make things better between us. She was convinced that I wasn't good enough for her son. Then, surprisingly, one day Dylan told me, "Rose, Mom called me today. She's hosting a small party and wants to invite you." "Are you sure she really wants to invite me?" I asked. "I don't see why she'd invite me, since she hates me," I said. "I've talked to her several times, Rose. She promised to be better, so maybe that's why she's inviting you to the party," Dylan replied. "That's strange, Dylan. I wonder where she's getting all this money for a party. Just this month, she said she needed money for car repairs. I guess she managed somehow. It's just a small gathering of 4 people or so. It won't be very expensive, and Mom seems excited about it. She really wants you there," Dylan explained. "Well, if that's what she wants, I'll go. You know, I don't mind spending time with her. It's just her comments and behavior towards me that are the problem. It looks like Mom is making an effort. Let's see what happens. Just keep an open mind about this. I really want you two to become friends," Dylan said. I doubted that Sherry would ever want to be friends with me. I mean, I could be civil to her and try on my side because I love Dylan, but it didn't seem like Sherry cared about Dylan's happiness at all. Even though I was skeptical, I decided to go to the party, but I had to wait for details from Sherry. Sherry texted me the very next day. I thought she was going to invite me through these texts, but here's what happened instead. Hey Rose. Dylan may have told you that I've been planning a party recently, Sherry said. Yes, Sherry. Dylan mentioned it to me last week. Are you texting to talk about that? I replied. Why else would I text you, Rose? You're of no use to me anyway. So I've been planning to go to this 5-star hotel in town that everyone has been raving about. I promised my friends I would take them there, and this is finally my chance, Sherry said. That's nice of you, Sherry. Will there be a lot of people? I asked. Yes, of course. You know I have many friends since I am a wealthy lady with a good family name in this town. I'm taking 15 people to the party and we're going to have a blast, Sherry said. Sounds like a great plan, Sherry. When do you want me to get there? I asked. Who said you could come? I didn't invite you yet, Sherry shot back. I was a little taken aback by this. I mean, Dylan clearly told me that his mom was going to invite me. Apparently, Sherry had told him that herself, and he had been genuinely happy for the past week because he thought this was Sherry trying to build a relationship with me. But what Sherry said completely threw me off. I was really confused as to why she was even telling me about the party if she didn't want to invite me. I said, "Oh, I assumed I was invited since you told Dylan that I was. I'm a little confused." Dylan can get a little carried away at times, Rose. I'm just informing you that I will be hosting a party, but you are not invited. This is a fancy place, and my friends and I are very particular about who we take with us. Yes, I'm throwing a party at a 5-star hotel, but don't even think about coming because you are not as classy as my family and friends, Sherry said. Okay, Sherry, I got the message loud and clear. Don't worry, since you don't want me to come, I won't. I don't care what Dylan said. If you don't want me there, I won't go. This is your day, and I don't want to be where I'm not wanted, I responded. I'm glad we cleared that up, Rose. That's all I needed to say. Now I need to get back to planning the party. There's a lot to do, and you probably wouldn't understand since you've likely never been to a big party, let alone planned one. After that, I didn't bother replying. People know me as patient and kind, but I have my limits, just like anyone else. Sherry was really testing me today. I hated that I even had a little hope that she might be trying to make peace. But no, she was just showing off her status and trying to make me feel inferior again. There was no olive branch. I was wrong and I felt stupid, but I wasn't going to let her get to me. I wasn't going to curse her out or anything. I had better things to do, and I knew karma would come for her one day. I didn't tell Dylan anything and simply waited for the day of the party to arrive. On the day of the party, Sherry had the nerve to send me a picture of herself and her friends. They were all dressed in designer clothes and busy posting pictures on social media. Sherry sent me the picture to show off how classy her friend circle is. It was downright disgusting. I didn't reply and just went back to work. About 3 hours later, I got a call from my dad. Now, here's something I should confess. My dad owns the hotel where Sherry was having her party. Sherry had no idea about this. 3 years ago, I got a nice inheritance from my grandfather, which I invested in my dad's business, so now I get a share of the profits from the hotel and the other businesses my dad owns. I actually come from a pretty well-off family, but I don't like to show it off, which is why Sherry didn't know about my background. She also didn't realize how expensive a 5-star hotel and its restaurant can be. She let her friends order whatever they wanted without even looking at the prices. The result? She was left with a $22,000 bill. That was exactly what ruined her and gave me my revenge. My dad called and said, "Rose, your mother-in-law is at the hotel." She came with a party and ordered a ton of food and champagne, racking up a bill of $22,000. Now she's asking for a 50% discount because she's short on cash. What should I do, Rose? I know she's your mother-in-law, but this is a lot of money. My servers are also upset because they were rude and entitled. God, just as I expected, Dad. This woman and her group are absolutely horrible. They have no respect for people and love to make fun of others. You know, she bragged to me about today's party and said I wasn't invited. What the hell? Why would she do that to you? That's absolutely ridiculous, my dad said. Yeah, Dad, She told me about the party just to rub it in my face that I wasn't invited. She said I wasn't classy or rich enough to get an invite. That's funny, coming from the woman who doesn't even have the money to pay for her party. You should have seen her arguing that we need to give her a discount because she brought us so much business. She went to the restaurant one day and is already claiming she brings in all the business. So typical of her. Rose, just hearing this is exhausting. I can't imagine what you and our poor staff are going through. I know, right? That woman even threatened to leave bad reviews if we didn't give her the discount. But we know better than to be scared of that. I'm going to leave this to you, Rose. Looks like you have the perfect chance to get back at her for what she said to you. That's exactly what I was thinking, Dad. You know what? Make her wash the dishes and get her friends to help too. Make sure they clean the entire kitchen, the dishes, and the floor since they insulted our staff as well. Let's get them some revenge too. If my mother-in-law tries anything stupid, you can call the cops on her. My dad laughed at my suggestion and gave me a big thumbs up. He even offered to share pictures of the event. When it happened, I really would have loved to see Sherry reap what she had sown. Dad promised to do as I suggested and hung up. An hour later, he sent me pictures of Sherry and her friends washing dishes and wiping the floor at our restaurant. Dad also said that when Sherry saw him come out as the restaurant owner, she looked relieved. She started telling her party that she knew the owner and that they'd get out of the situation. She was shocked when Dad told her to go clean his restaurant. Apparently, she was dumbstruck for a while and muttered something. Dad said that since she didn't consider me family, he wasn't considering her family either. It was hilarious. I wish I was there, but I did get some good pictures. After a while, Dylan came home looking pretty pissed off. I could tell he had heard from Sherry what had happened. I also knew she must have given him a twisted account of the events. He walked up to me and said, "Rose, what is this I'm hearing? Your father made my mom wipe down his restaurant and wash dishes. She said you told your dad to do this. What's going on?" "Sorry about that, Dylan. Dad did what is usual in this situation. Your mother went to our restaurant, racked up a $22,000 bill, and then said she didn't have more than $1,000. She also harassed our staff, and her party was a nightmare. I thought this would be a fitting punishment." "Wait a minute, Rose. Mom racked up a $22,000 bill? Who the hell did she take with her? What did they order?" "She took 15 people with her, Dylan. They ordered a lot of expensive stuff. I thought you knew about this. Mom told me she was taking 4 people only and that she invited you, but you declined." "No, Dylan, things didn't happen that way. Your mom did tell me about her party, but she didn't invite me. She did tell me that I didn't deserve an invite for not being classy enough. I can show you the text if you want." "What the hell, Rose?" "Yes. Please show me the text, and please ask your dad to send me the bills." I showed Dylan all the texts, and my dad sent him the bills. I also showed him some of the pictures to make him understand how many people Sherry took with her. Dylan got extremely mad when he saw everything. He called Sherry and said, "Mom, what the hell is wrong with you? You didn't tell me the full story. You only told me that you were a few dollars short of cash." "I told you the truth, Dylan. That wicked woman Rose must have given you a different story. I swear, Dylan, she purposely tried to sabotage me. That's why she declined my invitation." "Is that so, Mom? Then why did your text to her say that she wasn't invited? And why did you insult my wife by saying she's not classy enough for you?" "Oh, Dylan, it was just a harmless joke." "What was a harmless joke, Mom?" "The fact that you're calling your daughter-in-law names while spending thousands of dollars that you took from your son. Does being classy mean you have to rob your family and spend it on friends to look cool?" "Well, I just wanted a small party for me, Dylan. I don't know what the big deal is." "You think spending $22,000 on food and drink isn't a big deal? Do you think my money grows on trees? You're insane, Mom. Guess I was wrong to give you money whenever you gave me sob stories about needing it." "Well, guess what, Mom? I'm not giving you any more money again." "But Dylan, you've been so supportive for me for so long. You can't just stop now. It was a one-time mistake, Dylan. Why are you overreacting?" "No, Mom, I'm not overreacting. This isn't a one-time mistake. If you can't even consider my wife as family, I don't want anything to do with you. I always thought you'd change your mind, but you never did. I'm not paying you to insult my wife while she sacrifices a lot to support you. This ends now. Dylan, please listen to me. I'm sorry." Dylan didn't listen to Sherry anymore. He hung up on her and blocked her number. He also apologized to me profusely for being mad at me without knowing the full story. I forgave him because he stood up for me. We had a serious discussion about Sherry and decided that she would no longer be in our lives for now. Yes, Dylan is now a rich man, but he knows to stay humble. He found Sherry's behavior completely unacceptable, especially since it was directed towards me. I agreed it was very unfair that Sherry treated me like that, and I was all set to remove her from our lives for good. In the next few days, Sherry realized her own actions might have damaged her relationship with her son for good, and that sent her into a panic. She showed up at our house, demanding to speak with Dylan. Slowly, her demands turned into begging after she was turned away every time. Yes, Sherry worked to earn some money, but it wasn't enough for the high-end lifestyle she had gotten used to. All these years, Dylan had stopped giving her money entirely. Instead, he invested some of his funds into my dad's business to help him open new hotels and restaurants in nearby towns. We plan on expanding our hotel business to bigger cities, but we'll have to see what the future holds. Since Dylan stopped sending her funds, Sherry had to downgrade her lifestyle a lot. She struggled to keep her rented condo with her own money and ultimately decided to end her lease. She has now shifted to a small one-bedroom apartment and doesn't have any money to spend on extras after paying her bills. How do we know this? She emails us about it, of course. She still downplays her behavior and acts like we're overreacting. Suffice it to say, she'll be out of our lives for a while now. Just a month ago, I found out I was pregnant. Dylan and I are overjoyed and busy planning everything before the baby comes. Honestly, I'm glad that my child won't be around shallow people like Sherry anymore. But if the time comes, I'll make sure my dear mother-in-law doesn't get to fill my child's head with nonsense. For now, please wish us luck so we can be good parents to a healthy child.
I grew up enchanted by the magic my grandmother created in her tiny kitchen. Each morning, the warm, comforting aroma of freshly baked bread and pastries would weave through our modest apartment, drawing neighbors like moths to a flame. Her hands, weathered yet masterful, could transform the simplest ingredients into creations that brought joy to everyone lucky enough to taste them. "Remember this, Emma," she'd often say, kneading dough with rhythmic precision. "Good food isn't just about taste. It's about creating memories." Her words stayed with me long after she passed away, leaving behind a well-loved recipe book filled with her handwritten notes and secrets. I was 16 at the time, but I knew then what I wanted my life to be. 10 years later, I had graduated from culinary school and spent countless hours honing my craft in various bakeries. Every paycheck went straight into my dream fund, inching me closer to opening my own bakery. The journey wasn't easy. Double shifts left my feet aching, my hands raw. But I never wavered. I had a vision. That's when I met James. It was a rainy Tuesday morning, and he walked into the bakery where I worked, seeking refuge from the downpour. His damp suit and askew tie gave him a disheveled charm, but it was his smile that lit up the room. "Whatever smells so good, I'll take 2, he said, running a hand through his wet hair. I had just pulled my signature lavender honey croissants from the oven. "You're in luck," I said, placing one on a plate. "First one's on the house." He took a bite, his eyes widening in delight. "This is amazing. Please tell me you're not married." I laughed at his boldness. "Is that your way of asking me out?" "Only if it's working," he replied with a grin. It was. James was unlike anyone I'd ever met, kind, supportive, and genuinely interested in my dreams. When I told him about my plans to open my own bakery, he didn't dismiss them as far-fetched like others had. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions and offered encouragement. Our relationship blossomed quickly. 6 months later, we were discussing marriage. That's when I met his family, and everything changed. Patricia Chen, James's mother, was the embodiment of old money and high society. Her perfectly styled hair, designer wardrobe, and air of superiority made me feel out of place from the start. As the property manager of Crystal Mall, one of the city's most prestigious shopping centers, she wielded her status like a weapon. So, she began during our first dinner together, sipping her wine. "You're a baker?" "Yes," I said eagerly, determined not to let her rattle me. "I've been saving to open my own bakery." She laughed, a sharp sound that cut through the room. "Oh, darling. Do you know how many small businesses fail in their first year, especially now?" "James, surely you can help her find something more realistic?" James squeezed my hand under the table. Mom, Emma is incredibly talented. She knows what she's doing. Of course she does, Patricia replied, her smile dripping with condescension. But wouldn't you rather have a wife who can attend charity galas and board meetings? Someone who fits our world? Her words stung, but I didn't respond. James's father, Robert, quickly changed the subject. A tactic I later learned was his go-to for avoiding confrontation. Despite Patricia's disdain, James and I married 6 months later in a small ceremony. It was far from the grand affair Patricia had envisioned, and she made her disappointment known at every turn. At the same time, I was quietly working toward my bakery dream. A chance meeting with Marcus Sterling, a prominent real estate developer, changed everything. Impressed with my business plan and vision, Marcus offered to invest in my bakery, providing the capital to launch not just a small shop, but a high-end bakery and cafe concept with room to grow. What neither James nor Patricia knew was that Marcus owned Crystal Mall, where Patricia worked. When my application for a space crossed her desk, she dismissed it out of hand. A bakery? Here, she scoffed. This is a luxury mall, not some roadside stand. What she didn't know was that Marcus had already approved my tenancy. Her rejection was merely a formality. 2 weeks later, construction began on Sweet Heritage in the heart of Crystal Mall. Patricia's fury was palpable when she discovered her veto had been overruled, but there was nothing she could do. On the eve of the grand opening, she stopped by, her expression a mix of disdain and smugness. When this fails, and it will fail, don't expect James to pick up the pieces, she said, her tone cold. I smiled, holding back the truth. Thank you for your concern, Patricia. Care for a coffee? We're testing the machines. The next morning, Sweet Heritage opened its doors to a crowd of eager customers. The scent of fresh pastries filled the air, and the elegant decor showcased the perfect blend of tradition and modernity. By noon, we had sold out, and glowing reviews from food critics began pouring in. Patricia's disapproval was no match for the bakery's success. But as she stormed off that morning, unaware of Marcus's involvement, I couldn't help but feel a small victory. This wasn't just about proving her wrong, it was about proving myself right. And as I stood in my dream space, my grandmother's worn recipe book tucked into my apron pocket, I knew this was only the beginning. The situation reached a boiling point at the mall's monthly tenant meeting. Patricia had scheduled it during our busiest morning hours, forcing me to choose between overseeing the breakfast rush or attending. Reluctantly, I sent Sarah to manage the shop and went to the meeting. As you can see from these charts, Patricia was saying as I slipped into a seat, foot traffic in the north wing has become problematic. Certain establishments, she paused, her eyes locking on me, air causing congestion that disrupts our more established tenants. The boutique owner next door spoke up immediately. Actually, since Sweet Heritage opened, our sales are up 30%. Their customers shop while they wait for their orders. A ripple of agreement ran through the room. Patricia's face tightened. Well, she tried again. There have been complaints about odors. You mean the smell of fresh bread? Someone interrupted with a chuckle. It's fantastic. My customers say it makes the whole mall feel cozier. And what about Patricia? Marcus's calm but firm voice cut her off. Sitting at the back, the mall's owner had been silently observing. I think we've heard enough. Sweet Heritage has exceeded expectations and boosted mall traffic. Perhaps we should focus on more pressing concerns. Patricia sat down abruptly, her lips pressed thin. After the meeting, she cornered me in the hallway. I don't know how you fooled everyone, she hissed, but this won't last. You're not good enough for this mall, or for my son. Mom, James's voice startled her. He'd arrived to meet me for lunch. Patricia immediately softened. James, darling. I was just expressing concern about the stress Emma must be under, running a business like this. Surely you prefer her to have more time for family. The only stress I feel, I said evenly, comes from your constant interference. How dare you? Patricia snapped. I'm only thinking of my son's happiness. No, James interjected, his tone sharp. You're thinking of yourself. Emma has built something incredible. Why can't you just support her? Patricia's eyes glistened with well-timed tears. I see she's turned you against me. What kind of woman drives a wedge between a mother and her son? The kind who's transforming your entire mall, Marcus said, approaching. Patricia, my office. Now. We watched them walk away. James shook his head. I'm so sorry, Emma. I didn't know she was being this awful. It's not your fault, I said, though a part of me wished he'd seen it sooner. Before I could say more, Sarah rushed up, breathless. Emma, the food critic's review is live. The review was everything we'd hoped for, glowing praise for our innovative recipes, warm atmosphere, and excellent service. By evening, our shop was busier than ever, with new customers and even a few well-known food bloggers. Patricia didn't show up at the mall for several days. Gossip hinted at lengthy meetings with Marcus. I kept quiet, waiting for the right moment. That moment came Sunday evening at a family dinner Patricia insisted on hosting. To discuss some changes, she said cryptically. The meal was tense. Patricia picked at her food while Robert made awkward small talk. Finally, she cleared her throat. There have been developments at work, she began. James frowned. What's going on? Mr. Sterling is making organizational changes, she said, her voice tight. He's bringing in a new property manager, someone with fresh perspectives. What? James exclaimed. But you've managed Crystal Mall for years. Apparently, Patricia said bitterly, someone has convinced him otherwise. Someone, saw potential for something better, I said softly. All eyes turned to me. What do you mean? Robert asked. I took a steadying breath. Before I opened Sweet Heritage, I met Marcus at a seminar. He saw potential in my ideas, not just for a bakery, but for modernizing retail spaces. Patricia let out a sharp laugh. You? A baker with grand ideas? Yes, I said, sliding a folder across the table. These are proposals I've worked on with Marcus for over a year. Ideas for transforming Crystal Mall into a modern destination. James opened the folder, his eyes widening. Community spaces, seasonal festivals. Emma, this is amazing. Ridiculous, Patricia scoffed. Marcus would never. I already have, Marcus said, stepping into the room. Patricia's face drained of color. Mr. Sterling. I didn't. Emma owns 51% of Sterling Retail Properties Mall division, including Crystal Mall, Marcus announced. The room erupted. Patricia looked stunned. Robert choked on his wine. It's impossible. Patricia sputtered. Emma has raised mall revenues by 40% in 1 year, Marcus said. Her strategies are reshaping retail. Patricia whispered. Are you taking my job? No, I said firmly. You're being promoted. Regional Operations Director for our expansion. Assuming, I added, you can work professionally with me. Patricia's shock slowly gave way to grudging acceptance. I may have misjudged you. You definitely did, I replied. The question is, what will you do now? As we left, James squeezed my hand. I should have stood up for you sooner. Yes, I said, smiling. But what matters is what comes next. As we drove home, a quiet reflection settled over me. Patricia had been humbled, but questions lingered in my mind. Could her newfound acceptance of me endure beyond the reach of circumstance? Would it mean more or less? Because it had been spurred by necessity rather than genuine change. The next day heralded fresh challenges. News of the management shifts swept through the mall, transforming my daily interactions. Some employees greeted me with respect, others with nervous glances that hinted at their fears about the future. Yet beneath the surface, there was a growing energy, the buzz of something new and promising taking shape. Patricia, meanwhile, had taken a week to process the upheaval. When she returned, it was with a surprising fervor for the new initiatives, though her motivation seemed more about proving herself to Marcus than embracing the vision. Still, it was progress. 3 weeks later, she appeared at Sweet Heritage before dawn. Her usually immaculate posture was softened by uncertainty, and her designer handbag seemed more like a shield than an accessory. We need to talk, she said simply. I was wrist-deep in croissant dough, but gestured toward my office. 5 minutes. She waited silently, observing as I finished the delicate laminating process. By the time we sat across from each other, the tension had thickened. Her eyes wandered over the shelves in my office, pausing on my grandmother's recipe book. I've been reviewing the expansion plans, she began, her tone uncharacteristically measured. The demographic data for the suburban locations is impressive. I nodded. Thank you. I stayed silent, waiting for her to say what she had really come to say. Her fingers worried at the pearls around her neck. Finally, she spoke, her voice wavering. I owe you an apology. I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to hear her out. When James introduced you to us, I was prejudiced. I saw someone I believed didn't belong. Someone I thought would hold my son back. I couldn't have been more wrong. Her candor caught me off guard, but I simply asked, and now? Now, I see someone with vision and character. Someone who took every opportunity to retaliate against me and chose grace instead. You've built something extraordinary, and I misjudged you completely. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. And what changed your mind? You did, she said softly. Your actions, your resilience. And this place, it's more than a bakery, isn't it? It's a living, breathing example of what retail can become. That's the idea, I replied. Retail isn't just about transactions anymore. It's about creating connections and experiences, about telling stories. Her gaze drifted to the recipe book again. The morning buns, she said, almost to herself. Yes. They remind me of the ones my grandmother used to make. I lost her recipe years ago. I stood and retrieved the book from the shelf. Would you like to see how they're made? Her eyes widened, tears gathering at the corners. You'd share that with me. Family recipes are meant to be shared, I said. If we're going to make this work, we need to start there. That morning, Patricia Chen donned an apron in the Sweet Heritage kitchen for the first time. Her initial attempts at morning buns were far from perfect, uneven filling, lopsided shapes. But when she bit into her first creation, her smile was unguarded and genuine. Over the weeks that followed, Patricia's early morning baking sessions became a regular sight. The tenants, initially shocked, began to embrace the idea. Our professional relationship grew, and so slowly did our personal one. Months later, at the grand opening of Sweet Heritage's second location, Patricia was teaching her friends from the country club how to make croissants. Marcus, watching the scene, nudged me with a grin. Never thought I'd see the day. Neither did I replied honestly. The expansion flourished, with 5 new locations opening within a year. Each one reflected the heart of the original Sweet Heritage while embracing Patricia's operational expertise. The morning buns, now a signature item, became the subject of endless speculation among food bloggers. One evening, as we closed the flagship store, Patricia lingered. Emma, I've been thinking about your community initiative, she said. Oh, what if we expanded it? Cooking classes, maybe, teaching people how to create their own family traditions. I smiled. I think that's a wonderful idea. Her hug was unexpected but warm. Thank you, she whispered, for not giving up on me. As I drove home, I reflected on how life's sweetest triumphs often lie in the connections we forge. Success wasn't just about building a thriving business or proving others wrong. It was about honoring my grandmother's legacy and helping others, even those who resisted, grow. The next morning, Patricia was already at Sweet Heritage when I arrived. I was thinking, she said, her apron dusted with flour. Maybe we could create a special pastry for James and your anniversary. Something that tells your story. Our story, I corrected gently. The bitter and the sweet. She smiled, understanding. Yes, all of it. As we worked side by side in the warm glow of the rising sun, the scent of fresh possibilities filled the air. It wasn't just a new beginning for the bakery or the mall. It was a new beginning for us all.
I'd like to share my experience dealing with a challenging situation involving my mother-in-law, Lily. I must preface this by acknowledging that this topic might be sensitive for some, and I apologize if it offends anyone. Lily has exhibited clear signs of racism, particularly towards individuals with a different skin color than hers. Unfortunately, this has become evident in her treatment of me, her daughter-in-law. To provide some background, I am a 28-year-old woman married to my long-term boyfriend, Zachary, whom I met during our post-graduation at a management college. I am of Indian origin but was born and raised in Boston, while Zach is a white American. Ethnicity became a concern when Zach and I got serious about our relationship. Lily, my mother-in-law, had reservations about our union due to this difference. Despite her initial attempts to appear accepting, her true feelings of disdain were palpable. She would make comments about my ethnicity, emphasizing that it was the color of my skin that bothered her. Initially, during our dating phase, she seemed less aggressive about her disapproval. However, as the years passed and she witnessed our commitment to each other, her discomfort grew. She would openly address me using derogatory terms, even in the presence of Zach. This negativity escalated when Zach began discussing our future together. Lily's animosity extended beyond verbal remarks to mocking me directly, criticizing everything from my choice of clothing to personal habits. Despite being as American as she is, she consistently categorized white Americans as us and we, while referring to people of color as they. Eventually, Zach reached a point where he stopped visiting his family during festivities and special occasions due to Lily's behavior. While I valued family connections, I couldn't be happy with Zach cutting ties, as I cherished my own family deeply. Initially hesitant about marrying into a family where I felt unwelcome, Zach helped me understand the importance of setting boundaries and ensuring that our choices were respected. Even though my parents shared my concerns, Zach's father emerged as a supportive figure, assuring my parents that I would be loved and respected in the family. Despite Lily's disapproval, Zach's father emphasized that the decision to marry someone should be his, urging her to respect his choices and back off. I anticipated that she would cause a disruption at my wedding, but thankfully, everything went smoothly. Prior to the event, I was quite stressed, but my father and mother-in-law assured me they would handle her, and they did. She behaved courteously with my parents and guests, leading me to believe she had moved beyond my skin color and accepted me. To my surprise, however, she seemed stuck on that issue. In an effort to minimize interaction with her, we distanced ourselves. Nevertheless, my father-in-law continued to visit regularly, and I developed a strong bond with him. Lily, on the other hand, proved to be persistent. Despite our decision to stop visiting her, she started showing up at our house unannounced. Eventually, we felt obligated to host her, considering she was Zach's mother, and we couldn't be rude. What bothers me most is that every time she visits, she inquires about our family planning. I tried evading the question, claiming we haven't thought about it yet, but her response is always a vague good. I'm unsure whether she wants us to have children or not, and it's become increasingly difficult to interpret her intentions. I approached Zach about this, but he dismissed it, insisting she's merely curious. The problem is she never brings up the topic in front of him, making it challenging to convey the discomfort I feel from her body language and tone. It's more than just a general inquiry, and I find it unsettling. Recently, during her visit, I caught her searching through my bedside table drawer. It was a bizarre and creepy incident. I was occupied with a client call and informed her it would take about 45 minutes. She seemed fine with it, but when I later discovered the call had ended prematurely, I went to look for her. She had disappeared. Upon returning to the study to retrieve my phone, I heard scrambling noises from my bedroom. Zach wasn't home at the time, and upon entering the room, I found Lily near my bedside table, frantically searching through the drawer. Startled by my presence, she claimed to be looking for a vaporizer due to a cold. I offered her one, but she didn't use it, insisting she would check with my doctor later. Strangely, she didn't exhibit any signs of illness during her stay, making me recall previous instances where I had noticed my closet tampered with and my belongings displaced. Until now, I hadn't paid much attention to those occurrences. Looking back, I can't ignore the fact that during most of Lily's visits, she was at my house. It seems too frequent to be a mere coincidence. The problem is, while it's concerning, I can't bring myself to tell Zach. It's not that he wouldn't understand, but to him, it doesn't seem creepy that his mother was searching for a vaporizer in my drawer. I lack enough evidence to prove my observations, and I'm unclear about what she's even up to. Any advice on how to deal with this? Do you foresee anything? I just want to be alert before I'm caught off guard. Update number 1. Hey everyone, thanks for helping me break down Lily's intentions. If it weren't for you guys, I would have taken forever to figure out what she's up to. I made a list of all the possible things Lily could be behind, and the top assumption that made the most sense was a baby. I connected the dots, considering how she used to ask about having children and then started searching through my bag, closet, and drawer. She must be checking if we use protection, finding them in any of these places, and being reassured that we're not planning children yet. I know it's common for grandparents to expect grandchildren, but in that case, she could have asked us to plan instead of sneaking around. These were my assumptions, and as soon as you suggested it, I started playing around with her to confirm my doubts. I hid my pills and his protection in a different place, not accessible to her. I was careful with my bag and closet when she visited my home. Also, I started playing with my words while talking to her. The next time she asked if we were planning a baby, I blushed and said, "Yeah, we're kind of planning." The expected reaction should have been a positive one, but hers was, "No way, it's too early. You guys should enjoy your life first. The baby can wait." I've never heard a mother-in-law say this. It wasn't even advice, it was more of an instruction. Currently, I'm just enjoying this drama, teasing her that we're planning for a baby and relishing her reaction. I know it's a concern that she doesn't want us to have a baby, and I don't know why. Or maybe I do. I'll probably update you when I have more details about her intentions. This was just a quick update for everyone to have a good laugh. Thanks to those who have been checking on my last post. Update number 2. Hey guys, this is going to be a longer one. I finally figured out Lily's intention behind all these creepy activities. After a month of teasing her that we were planning for a baby, she finally spoke out. One day, she visited us, and Zach was also home. We were 3 sitting together. I said, "Zach, do you know Mom had been insisting me not to have children?" Now, Zach was like, "What?" Lily also turned pale. Zach asked her why she would suggest that, and she ran short of words. I said, "Mom thinks that we should enjoy our life more and children would just destroy our peace and privacy." Mind you, Zach loves children. It was I who was pushing the plan of the baby to the next year. Zach wanted it now. Lily tried to cover up and say, "Yes, I was suggesting it for your own well-being. Enjoy your youth." Zach said he had enjoyed enough, and now he wanted a baby. You know, I could have informed Zach about it earlier, but the joy of having a face-to-face confrontation was too tempting. It led to a heated argument between Zach and Lily, escalating to the point where she turned aggressive. Lily asserted that if we truly wanted to have a baby, we should opt for traditional surrogacy. She justified this suggestion by claiming that pregnancy is difficult for women, citing her business and career as factors that would be adversely affected. According to her, not only would my work be impacted, but Zach's business would also suffer because he would have to take care of me. She insisted that we could afford surrogacy and encouraged us to go for it. I was perplexed. I knew she couldn't be genuinely kind and considerate. Her suggestion of surrogacy wasn't about our work and well-being. Zach, in response, remained calm, agreeing to consider the idea. Lily, thinking that we were immediately planning for a baby, showed up a few days later. This time, she deliberately checked Zach's availability, claiming she had something important to discuss. To my surprise, she brought a list of top places providing surrogacy facilities and had shortlisted women offering surrogacy. As if that wasn't enough, she also had a list of female egg donors, shortlisting 2 with the best genetic features. Zach and I were taken aback. I used a punching bag to calm my nerves, while Zach lost his temper, yelling at her for being nosy in our lives. He firmly stated that it wasn't her business to interfere in our lives. Lily insisted that her motive was well-intentioned, but I continued to probe. I questioned the need for an egg donor when I was fertile enough. Finally, she blurted out, "Your egg is going to have a brown baby. I cannot let you guys color our genes." The outrageousness of her statement left us in shock. Zach would have resorted to physical confrontation if she wasn't his mother. Lily stormed out, giving me a look that suggested I had ruined her relationship with Zach. I didn't care. I had to bring this to Zach's notice. A few days later, she sent a sorry card to Zach. but he refused to speak to her. Despite her attempts to mend the relationship, he remained firm. She even visited his office with flowers, but Zach did not forgive her. She's now trying to fix her relationship with Zach by being extra sweet to me, but she hasn't apologized to me. In reality, she had belittled and offended me. Fortunately, Zach defended me so firmly that I didn't need to intervene. I hope she learns her lesson and refrains from interfering in our personal life. I'll keep you updated if anything develops. Update number 3, guys. Lily doesn't seem to have learned her lesson. I apologize for not updating this often due to my hectic schedule, but I appreciate the supportive space here. I feel safe sharing these events with you. Following the confrontation, Zach ceased communication with his mom. Despite her attempts to reach out, he remained silent. Lily resorted to sobbing to my father-in-law, expressing remorse for her words and expressing a desire to mend everything. My father-in-law, a principled family man, holds significant respect from all of us. He reached out to Zach, urging him to forgive Lily. Zach, influenced by his father's values, forgave his mother but established a firm boundary against her interference in our lives. Lily pledged not to meddle, expressing guilt and a desire to spend time with us to cope. Although Zach and I spent minimal time at home due to work, parties, or vacations, we allowed Lily to stay. Amid discussions about children, Zach and I decided to start planning for a baby immediately. Despite our efforts, my cycles came and went with no positive results after 3 or 4 cycles of trying. Concerned, we consulted a doctor, repeating tests for genetic issues and psychological barriers, but nothing surfaced. The doctor advised us to keep trying for at least a year. A visit to a fertility counselor revealed the challenges some women face after years of trying, providing a glimmer of hope. While Lily lived with us, she did not intrude, and I kept the fertility struggles from her, attributing my stress to work. As therapy proved ineffective, I stumbled upon something suspicious: Lily tampering with my morning juice. I witnessed it and confirmed my suspicion with my maid's involvement. I promptly disposed of the juice and realized that the lack of side effects indicated a connection to my birth control pills. I refrained from eating or drinking anything separately and considered revealing this to Zach. Lacking evidence, I consulted a doctor friend who suggested avoiding revenge at that point, and instead recommended distancing myself from Lily. She requested me to assure Lily that I was opting for traditional surrogacy due to my alleged inability to produce healthy eggs. I insisted on a written report, but she claimed she couldn't risk her career. Despite this, she created a fake report under her name and location, stating that I was not fertile enough to produce eggs. Returning home, I showed it to Lily, feigning tears and distress. I conveyed that the doctor suggested surrogacy, and she appeared delighted. I asked her not to inform Zach because he wouldn't agree to using someone else's genes for our baby. Making her my ally, we both started looking for doctors and surrogate mothers. Lily, however, urged me to continue the search as she had to return to her husband. She insisted on finding gorgeous white women as donors. Once she left, I confronted the maid about the birth control pill incident. Tearfully, she confessed to Lily's instructions, but I recorded her admission. I didn't fire her because she was bribed by Lily, threatening to report her to the police if she revealed this to Lily. Now that Lily's not around, I'm hoping to conceive naturally. I'll update you when I have time. Thanks for checking in. Update number 4, starting with good news. We're expecting twins in February. I know it's a late update. Blame my pregnancy exhaustion. Conceiving on the first cycle after Lily left, Zach and I were overjoyed upon seeing the positive results. Our happiness doubled upon seeing our twins on the ultrasound. Insisting on keeping the pregnancy a secret until the first trimester was over, I explained to Zach about Lily's actions. I played the recorded confession for him, and he was furious but chose not to fire the maid. We minimized conversations with Lily, occasionally updating her on our surrogacy progress, claiming we had put a halt on it. About a month ago, it was Lily and father-in-law's 30th anniversary, and they organized a huge celebration. I proposed using the occasion to announce our pregnancy, as I was about to complete the 3rd month. After the cake cutting, during the toasts, Zach and I announced our family of 2 was soon becoming a family of 4, presenting 3D images of our twins. People showered us with love and blessings. Lily assumed we were pregnant through surrogacy, so her reaction was subdued. Later, she asked why I hadn't informed her about the surrogacy. I suggested discussing it after the party, and once the celebration ended, we gathered as close family members. Lily questioned why I wasn't drinking and demanded to see a picture of the egg donor to examine her facial features. In response, I tightened my dress to reveal my tiny baby bump. Lily, taken aback, lost her composure, yelling and hurling insults at me. Zach intervened, urging her to stop, but she proceeded to disclose all our conversations about infertility and surrogacy. Standing there quietly, I felt the weight of her revelations. Zach played the confession recording for everyone, leaving my father-in-law furious to learn about Lily's malicious actions to prevent my pregnancy. In her defense, Lily expressed her reluctance to see a brown child in her family, causing an uproar among Zach's extended family. Shouting and yelling ensued, primarily between Lily and the others present, including Zach's uncle, brother-in-law, and his wife. Lily continued making outrageous statements, and I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. My father-in-law sternly warned Lily that if she spoke one more word against me, he would divorce her. Zach asserted that she had done enough harm and banned her from our home and future children. Lily left the house, portraying herself as the victim, claiming nobody understood her. My father-in-law and others consoled and apologized to me for Lily's behavior. Despite his apologies, my father-in-law expressed regret for failing to keep Lily in check. Zach and I decided to take a short trip to help me cope with Lily's wrath and the impact on my mental state due to pregnancy hormones. During the trip, I cried uncontrollably, but it eventually aided in my emotional recovery. Despite Lily's attempts to contact Zach and apologize, he remained adamant about not allowing her in during the pregnancy phase. We couldn't trust her, fearing she might disturb me mentally. I wanted to focus on being happy and enjoying my pregnancy. Thank you all for the love and blessings. Please wish me a healthy pregnancy. I'm not surprised that the mother-in-law was cut off towards the end of the story, and the father-in-law gave a strict warning. If she continued with her behavior, he would divorce her. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. Feel free to share your comments below. Thank you for your support, and I hope you have a fantastic day. Oh, isn't this exquisite? It's not just lovely, it's a pink diamond, and it comes with a price tag of $50,000. My mother-in-law, who couldn't be bothered to attend my own mother's funeral, appears to be relishing a lavish getaway with her friends, completely oblivious to my presence. She gleefully shared details about her new sparkling pink diamond ring, seemingly fueled by jealousy towards a friend who flaunted a similar ring. In her triumph, she revels in having outdone her friend by choosing a more expensive ring from the same store. However, the reality is far from what it seems. It's implausible for her to afford such a costly item, and it turns out she had secretly taken money from my husband's safe to make the purchase. This money, crucial for her future, had been earmarked for her nursing home fees. My name is Hillary Johnson, a 46-year-old woman living with my husband Steve, who is 7 years my senior, and our high school senior daughter Gina. Despite not being wealthy, we lead a stable life. I have worked part-time at a local drugstore for over a decade, and my hobby is cultivating herbs. Lately, I've been challenging myself with a medical herb certification exam. Gina and I often discuss her future dreams, bringing us joy. 6 months ago, my father-in-law passed away, introducing significant changes to our modest lifestyle. According to his will, the house went to Steve, and the cash to my mother-in-law. The money was intended for her nursing home fees, given her age of 75. Despite this, she pleaded tearfully to live in the house, and after much debate, we agreed to cohabitate for a year while searching for a suitable home. The area where the family home is situated has now become a popular high-end residential area. Still, we are not wealthy. It's an old landholding. I learned that my mother-in-law had a habit of spending recklessly, and though I had prepared for it to some extent, the reality was shocking. As Steve heads out for dinner shopping, my mother-in-law, on the first day of our cohabitation, casually asks, "Hillary, could you lend me some money? I'm going out." "Thank you. Just in case something comes up, and I need more, give me $100 for now," she says under the pretext of buying dinner. I found myself pondering how much groceries she intended to purchase. Despite my reservations, I made the mistake of giving her the requested amount. 2 hours later, she returned by taxi, laden with bags from an upscale department store filled with expensive deli items and sweets. "Tonight, we feast. I wanted to try these side dishes. They're supposed to be delicious, and we have desserts too," she exclaimed proudly. Curious, I asked, "Mother, how much did this cost?" She replied, "Well, let's see. I went a bit over because of the taxi, but I covered the extra, so it's fine." Her proud declaration left me speechless, but little did I know this was just the beginning. Managing finances became my biggest headache after moving to the family home. While my father-in-law was alive, we used online supermarkets for groceries, paying with his card. Learning from my initial mistake of giving her large sums of money, I no longer entrusted her with shopping and kept the wallet in a locked drawer. Unhappy with not receiving money, she stopped doing any housework, caring only for the flowers at the entrance. Despite our monthly allowance of $300, she squandered it on clothes, beauty salons, meals, or coffee with neighbors. By mid-month, she would usually run out of money and ask for more. Frustrated by her reckless spending, as I was saving for my daughter's education, I calmly admonished her when she requested more money for a lunch date with friends. "Even Steve, who works, gets an allowance of $300. I can't give you more than someone who's working, so please use it more wisely." Dissatisfied, she returned to her room, likely to ask Steve for money later. The allowance came from the nursing home fund, and if it diminished, it would be her who suffered. When Steve came home, I expressed my concerns. "Did your mother ask you for more allowance again?" He replied, "Yes, she did. But I can't be too hard on her. She must be lonely without Dad. She's always been vain, you know. But I want to fulfill her wishes for at least this year that she's here." "I understand, but your kindness isn't truly benefiting her. Besides, it will eventually have repercussions for us." "You're right. I get it." My mother-in-law had a tendency to flaunt, especially in front of her 3 old friends who were mothers of my husband's classmates living in the neighborhood. I became aware of this during the funeral arrangements for my father-in-law. "Steve, it's your father's funeral, so arrange the altar this way and get more extravagant flowers. The neighbors are coming. Don't embarrass your father," she instructed. Steve, being the spouse, complied with her demands to some extent, but the costs were significantly high. My mother-in-law's primary aim was to show off to the neighbors. I even felt sympathy for her, having to keep up with people from a different lifestyle. During the funeral, she only greeted 3 families of her friends. One day, after having lunch with her friends, she came back excited, her eyes sparkling. Today, Debbie showed me a ring worth $20,000 that she got from her husband for their golden wedding anniversary. "I've never seen a $20,000 ring before. That's a wonderful gift. You don't have such wealthy friends, do you, Hillary? You'll probably never see anything like that in your life," she remarked with superiority and sarcasm, using her friends to boast. "Hillary, you're so plain. Why don't you put on some makeup? Have you never been to an upscale lunch?" It was all about one-upping me. I tried to ignore her words, but she seemed increasingly hostile towards me, especially after I refused to give her more money. After settling my father-in-law's affairs and starting to look for a nursing home, my mother's health took a turn for the worse. When my sister and I rushed to the hospital, the doctor informed us that she had about 3 months to live due to advanced cancer. She was in a fragile state and could deteriorate at any time. My mother had occasionally mentioned feeling unwell before, but being a person of great endurance, it wasn't easy for her to show any signs of weakness. I regretted not paying more attention to her. I asked my sister to stay with her while I went to fetch some clothes and valuables from her apartment. As I packed a large bag in her room, I found some cash, likely her living expenses for the month, in a drawer. I took the cash with me, planning to shower and head back to the hospital. I left the bag in Steve's upstairs room and, after getting ready, noticed the zipper slightly open. A sense of unease washed over me as I checked the bag and found the cash missing. Suppressing my rising anger, I went downstairs to my mother-in-law's room. "Mother, may I ask you something?" I inquired as she prepared to leave. Turning around, she asked, "How's your mother doing? I have plans with my friends right now." I confronted her. "The money that was in the bag in our room, you have it, don't you? That money belongs to my mother. Please return it." "I don't know what you're talking about. I never go upstairs." "Are you accusing me of stealing?" she retorted, rushing past me and heading for the door. "I'm going out for a fancy Chinese dinner with my friends tonight, so I don't need your poor excuse for a meal. Give my regards to your mother." With a smirk on her face, she left the house, leaving me in shock. Just then, Jenna came home and asked, "Mom, are you okay?" "Your grandmother's money. My mother-in-law took it." Unable to confront her without evidence, tears naturally started to fall from my eyes. Jenna gently stroked my back to calm me down. "That's terrible. It must have been her. I've seen her coming down from upstairs before. To think she would stoop to taking your grandmother's money. I can't forgive her. But how's Grandma? If you're going to the hospital, I'll come with you. Let's think of a way to get back at her." As we walked, Jenna's words encouraged me, lightening my heart a bit. Despite feeling sorry for my father-in-law, I decided to protect my family in my own way. A few days later, my mother's condition suddenly worsened, and she passed away. In her final days, she was mostly in a daze, occasionally lucid. I expressed my gratitude to her repeatedly for raising me, for her love, for Gina's future dreams, for the plans with Steve, and for our old age. She didn't speak, but her eyes smiled gently and sometimes nodded. While talking to her, I remembered a visit to my father-in-law before his death. He had thought about divorcing my mother-in-law, but didn't want to trouble his son and his wife. He asked me to sell the house and put my mother-in-law in a nursing home after his death. That's when he told me about her spending habits. Her attitude changed when Steve started kindergarten, living in a wealthy area, feeling pressure to keep up with rich neighbors. She deluded herself into thinking she was wealthy too, possibly fueled by Steve's success in a famous company. I regretted not putting her in a nursing home sooner. It could have prevented the theft of my mother's money. Steve and Gina arrived in time for my mother's final moments, but only my sister and her husband were there at the end. When we returned home to prepare for the funeral, my mother-in-law was out. I decided to show her the last bit of kindness. We held a small funeral for my mother without her presence. I tried calling her, but she was out and never answered. When I returned home after the funeral, everything was quiet as if she had stayed out overnight. Then, my mother-in-law returned in a good mood. "My condolences for your loss. It must have been hard," she greeted me. I noticed a shiny new jewel in her hand that I had never seen before. "Oh, this look, isn't it beautiful?" A pink diamond. It cost $50,000. How did you get that, Mother?" I asked. She replied, "I bought it, of course." Debbie introduced me to the store. It's a reservation-only place in New York City, so I went for an overnight stay with my friends. The hotel we stayed at, and the meals were wonderful. To my astonishment, my mother-in-law indulged in luxuries during my mother's funeral, enjoying an overnight trip to New York with friends. I was left speechless with disbelief. I bought something even more expensive than what Debbie showed me, Feels good, mother, my mother-in-law declared. I couldn't comprehend how she obtained such an expensive item. You don't have that kind of money. How did you get it? I questioned. Nonchalantly, she replied. Oh, I found it in Steve's room safe. My passbook was in there with exactly $50,000. Since it's in my passbook, it's my money, right? I felt frozen and disappointed by her actions during my mother's funeral, although, in all honesty, her behavior was somewhat expected. It was confirmed that she had entered our room upstairs. The passbook was in the safe of the study room that Steve now uses. The safe was an old dial type, and Steve, finding it tedious to turn the dial, left it unlocked, thinking the study was locked anyway. On the day my mother passed away, I intentionally left the study unlocked, suspecting that she might take the opportunity to enter our room and take the passbook from the safe. That $50,000 is from my father's inheritance. Do you understand what that means? I asked her. Unperturbed, she replied. I know it's my money left by your father. So what's wrong with using it? I began to feel pity for my mother-in-law. Sure, it's your money and you're free to use it. But that was meant for your old age. We'll be moving out, so please manage on your own from now on. At first, my mother-in-law looked confused, but she slowly turned pale as she understood my words. Wait, isn't there a separate fund for the nursing home? It's more than this amount, right? She inquired. I explained, yes, there was more, but it decreased due to the inflated funeral costs of my father-in-law and your monthly requests for more allowance from Steve. Feeling the need to illustrate the alternatives, I handed her brochures of lovely nursing homes I had collected over several months. She looked at them speechless and shaking. At that moment, Steve and Gina came down from upstairs. I had reported to them after opening the study, so they had come to check. Steve, initially skeptical that his mother had stolen the money, had no complaints about what I did. While I would have properly arranged for my mother-in-law's nursing home if nothing had happened, her intrusion into our room and the theft of the money prompted me to protect my family. I had made it clear that entering our room and touching the money was unacceptable. I decided to sever ties with her for life. Steve, you'll stay in this house, right? It's sad to sell a house filled with memories, but taking care of parents is a son's duty. I desperately clung to Steve. Checking the safe, I realized she had taken more than the passbook, the cash I withdrew for the car inspection too. That's too much. I trusted you, Steve, I said, shocked by her actions. Struggling to speak, Steve admitted, Oh, I have it. Just borrowed a bit. It was $11,000. But that wasn't all. What about Hillary's mother's money? I demanded. Panicking, she replied. Oh, I'll return that too. Then it's fine, right, Hillary? You'll forgive me now, won't you? She hastily handed me the money, possibly pretending about the $50,000 ring. Until the end, there were no words of apology about my mother's money. I'm sorry, but I can't live with you anymore. I'll protect my own family from now on, I declared. She broke down crying, clinging to Steve till the end. However, Steve's grief-stricken anger was intense, and he acted quickly. He sold her belongings to create a lump sum and found a nursing home affordable on her pension. The chosen home, though, was far from the family home. I probably won't see her again in my lifetime. Steve occasionally gets calls from the home, and she seems calmer now, possibly settling into her new environment. I regretted not placing her in a home earlier. Perhaps if we hadn't lived in that house, her life might have been happier. A part of me felt a little sympathy for her. After she left, we moved, waiting for Gina's graduation. Gina got into her desired university and started living on her own. The family home, being in a popular area, quickly found a buyer. Steve is now applying for a transfer to a branch near the sea. We plan to spend a few years until retirement there, searching for our final home. We hope to continue living peacefully and harmoniously as a family.
Mother-in-law, please don't take money from my wallet. My mother-in-law, who couldn't resist stealing, was trying to take money from my wallet again. When I told her to stop, she got angry. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. Then she kicked me out of the house. She didn't realize she was making a big mistake. My name is Alina, and I'm 27 years old. I met Mike through a friend's introduction, and today we happily got married. When I was young, I lost my dad, and my mom raised me by herself. I respect and love her very much. However, when I first met my future mother-in-law, she said, "You look unlucky. That's why you lost your husband early." My mom and I were shocked by her rude comment about my late father. Both my father-in-law and Mike scolded her, but she defended herself, saying she was just being honest. My mom was worried about my marriage, but since my father-in-law and Mike were supportive, she eventually agreed to it. During the wedding, I was worried about what my mother-in-law might do. Thankfully, everything went smoothly. Just when I was starting to relax, there was a knock on the door of the dressing room. "Alina, it's your mom and Robert. Can we come in?" "Yes, please come in." It was my mom and her boyfriend Robert. They both shared their heartfelt congratulations and sat down. "That was a wonderful ceremony. Congratulations, Alina. You looked absolutely stunning." Robert was so moved that he cried the whole time. Well, seeing Robert's tear-streaked face, both my mom and I burst into laughter. In that cheerful atmosphere, Mike knocked and entered. "Alina, great job today. Mom, Robert, thank you for being here." "Good job, Mike. Where are your parents?" My mom got tired and wanted to leave early, so I let her go. "I'm sorry." "It's fine. More importantly, keep your promise to me, okay?" "Of course." The agreement between my mom and Mike was that if my mother-in-law did anything to me while we were living together, Mike would always support and defend me. Because of my mother-in-law's insistence, I had to live with her after getting married. Initially, the plan was for Mike and me to live together, just the two of us. But my mother-in-law threw a fit, saying we couldn't get married unless we lived with her. Seeing my distress, my mom made this promise with Mike. Even my father-in-law said, "If something's up, let me know." Mike also told me that if living with his mom became truly unbearable, we could consider living separately. "Alina, if my mother does something, tell me right away, okay? Even if it seems small." "All right, I understand. Thanks. And I'm still working, so I'm not home that much. I think it'll be okay." "You're being naive, Alina. Well, this is something you'll only understand once you experience it. Take care of my daughter, Mike." "Yes, ma'am." I soon learned that my mom was right. After returning from our honeymoon and living in Mike's family home, I immediately saw my mother-in-law's true colors. "This food looks terrible. Redo it." Without even tasting the meal I had just prepared, my mother-in-law dumped it straight into the trash. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Mike immediately scolded her, but she retorted, "I can't let you two eat such terrible-looking food." "I threw it out for your sake and yet? Never mind." Then she stormed off to her room. Apologizing, Mike and his dad decided to take us out for dinner. When my mother-in-law heard this, she threw a tantrum about not being invited, but Mike and his father just ignored her. This made her even angrier, and she started harassing me more. Mike's family runs a small workshop, and Mike is busy preparing to take over. He studies hard, attends meetings with his father, and networks a lot. I have my job during the weekdays and am hardly home, but the weekends were a nightmare. My mother-in-law mostly stays home, does no housework, and either lounges around watching TV or goes out. Mike tries to help out when he can, and after the food incident, my father-in-law told me I can manage on my own. Just prepare food for Mike. When my mother-in-law found out about this, she said, "As a daughter-in-law, it's only natural that you should prepare food for the whole family." But my father-in-law dismissed her. Adding to the mix, my mother-in-law has very old-fashioned views. "Alina, when are you going to quit your job? When are you having kids? A woman can achieve anything with ability and charm, Don't you understand? Oh, maybe you lack those, so you're still working." From her comments, it's clear my mother-in-law doesn't work and is a housewife. But according to Mike, she struggles with household chores. She's technically listed as an employee at my father-in-law's company, but she doesn't actively work. Instead, she receives a salary as pocket money from my father-in-law. However, whenever she likes something, she buys it right away, so my father-in-law handles the finances. Mike never lends her money, so when she's short on cash, she asks me, "Alina, can you lend me some money?" "I'm sorry, but Mike told me not to lend you any money." After enduring her mistreatment, I couldn't understand why she expected me to lend her money willingly. Even after I refused, she persisted. "I'll make sure Mike and your dad don't find out, okay?" "I can't, sorry." "Please, Alina." "I'm sorry." My mother-in-law tried to smile and pleaded with me, but when I continued to refuse, she erupted in her usual temper tantrum. "Why are you being so difficult? You're really stingy for not helping me, even though I'm asking nicely. I can't believe it. That's why I treat you badly. Does she even realize she's the one being mean? It's surprising that someone as kind-hearted as Mike could have a mother with such a personality. Just when I was mentally trying to escape from her drama, she stormed off somewhere, clearly irritated. When Mike came home and I told him about his mother pestering me for money, both he and my father-in-law scolded her. Instead of feeling sorry, my MIL glared at me and accused, "You tattled." She then sneakily tried to rummage through my purse and take cash from my wallet. While I was out of the room, we made eye contact as I walked back in. "MIL, don't you dare take money from my wallet. I can't believe this." I warned her, but she snapped back at me. "Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. It's like stealing from someone else's wallet. How dare you speak up to me? Unbelievable. If you're going to be like this, just leave this house." I had reached my limit with my selfish NIL. Honestly, getting away from her unreasonable behavior would be a relief. I told her, fine, and started packing my things. She watched me with a smug grin, seemingly satisfied. "Thanks for everything." It had only been 3 months since I moved in with my in-laws, but I vowed never to live with my NIL again and went back home in anger. I was so upset that I forgot to tell Mike. However, when he returned home, he found out from his father about what had happened with his mother. "Where's Alina? Hey, where did Alina go?" When Mike and his father returned home from work and noticed I was gone, they asked my MIL about it. She proudly said, "Oh, I just kicked that useless daughter-in-law out." She laughed loudly, but both Mike and his father looked worried and uneasy. Seeing their serious reaction, she continued obliviously. "This is what I've been saying. I warn you not to marry a woman from a single-parent family. She's always disobedient and challenges me." All she had to do was agree with whatever I said. "What have you done?" My father-in-law shouted, more agitated than I had ever seen him. My NIL looked shocked, clearly not expecting such a reaction. Father-in-law collapsed to his knees, looking devastated, muttering, "It's over, my life is over." "What's wrong?" My MIL seemed bewildered, struggling to grasp what was happening. "You've done something unthinkable. Why did you kick her out?" Father-in-law's voice trembled with emotion. "Elena is the stepdaughter of the CEO of the company we do business with." "What?" It finally dawned on my MIL what she had done. Her face went pale for a moment, but she quickly composed herself, insisting she hadn't done anything wrong. "Mike, call Alina right now." I did. "She's at Robert's place now." "This is serious. Let's go immediately." I got a call on my cell from Mike, telling me that his father-in-law was possibly putting his mother-in-law into the car and heading our way. From the background noise, I could hear my MIL shouting frantically and my father-in-law yelling, "Robert, you came to the wedding with my mother as her new husband." Even though he's technically my stepfather, it turns out Robert is actually the boss of my father-in-law's business client. My mother had always said she wouldn't remarry until after I got married, so she hadn't met our families until the wedding and wasn't seated in the family section at the ceremony. So my mother-in-law doesn't know about this. My father-in-law only recently found out that Robert was my mother's new husband. Robert married my mother after I got married, but I've known Robert for nearly 20 years. After my father passed away, my mother raised me on her own. No matter how tough things got, she never complained and was always smiling, brightening up everyone around her. Robert, smitten by her, proposed to her, but she apparently told him she wouldn't marry anyone until after I was married. I don't want to burden Elena anymore, getting a new dad, changing her last name, moving. I can't make her go through all of that just because of adult circumstances. I'm so sorry. I'll wait. Huh? I'll wait until Alina grows up, becomes independent, and someday gets married and is happy. Then it'll be my turn to make you happy. Robert, can I stay and watch over Elena with you until then? By then, won't we be pretty old? It doesn't matter. If we're talking age, I'll be even older. Robert laughed heartily, my mother with tears in her eyes, thanking him. Robert respected my mother's wishes, always promising to wait. They never officially married until I did, but I knew they deeply loved each other, even after losing my father. Sometimes I felt like if my mother married Robert, she would be taken away from me. There were times I wasn't kind to Robert, but he always treated me lovingly, often taking us out or going on trips. He even tried to pay for my college tuition. My mother declined, saying it was a matter of principle, but that's the kind of relationship we had with Robert. Of course, my childhood home now belonged to Robert, so as my NIL suggested, we returned there. When we filled Robert in on everything that happened with my in-laws and about my NIL, he was furious. Knowing the business relationship with my father-in-law's company, he was boiling with anger when the doorbell rang. My mother checked the monitor and saw my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Mike outside. She asked Robert if they could come in, and he agreed, unlocking the door to welcome them. As soon as they entered and saw the tense atmosphere, both my father-in-law and Mike knelt down. "We're deeply sorry. My wife was very rude to Elena. It seems she forced Elena to leave. my father-in-law apologized. I'm sorry too. If Elena is uncomfortable, we can stop living together, Mike added. While they were apologizing, my MIL stood defiantly with her arms crossed. What are you talking about? Elena is the one at fault here, right? I did nothing wrong. Besides, who will do the housework now that Elena is gone? I was stunned, unable to close my open mouth. Looking at my indifferent MIL, I knew she lacked common sense, but I never expected her behavior to escalate like this. It was my father-in-law who finally broke the silence. I knew you were sheltered and naive, but I never imagined you'd go this far, he said with resignation. We'll start the divorce proceedings as soon as tomorrow. I'm utterly disappointed in you. What are you talking about? Why should I be the one to get a divorce? If anyone should, it should be Elena and Mike, since she left on her own. My MIL's earlier arrogance vanished when faced with the prospect of divorce from her husband. Mike joined in the confrontation. Why should I divorce Elena? I love her. I have no intention of divorcing her. We only agreed to live with you because you begged us, crying, and yet you treat Elena like a maid. Stop talking nonsense. My father-in-law nodded in agreement and said, a mix of exasperation and anger evident in his voice, your father asked me to take care of you, so I became your husband and took care of you. But no matter how many times I warn you, you never listen and you never show any remorse. At this age, you're beyond my control. My mother-in-law clung to my father-in-law, who appeared distant, perhaps reflecting on the challenges he had faced until now. What about the company? It belonged to my father. Your father passed the company to me when he passed away. Even if I retire, Mike is here. You've only been a figurehead at the company and haven't done any real work. Do you think you can suddenly take over? I won't let the employees end up on the streets because of you. My MIL appeared to be searching for a way out as she faced criticism from her husband and Mike. Just to clarify, my MIL is a true daddy's girl, raised in luxury. She's never held a job, always living as a pampered princess. Without her husband's support, she wouldn't be able to manage household chores, let alone a job. My MIL tried to hold on to my father-in-law, but his decision seemed firm. Elena, say something. Out of desperation, she turned to me for support. I also believe divorce is the right decision. Someone who tries to steal money from another's wallet and then reacts aggressively when confronted, who knows what she might do next? What are you talking about? To those who might not know the real reason I left, I explained that it was because my MIL had attempted to steal money. Their faces turned pale. I can't believe this. This is unbelievable. Stop exaggerating. I was just borrowing a little, MIL retorted unapologetically. Both my mother and Robert countered firmly. In most places that's called theft, which is a serious crime. I thought you were unreasonable, but I cannot allow my daughter to return to a place where someone like you lives. I agree. Elena may not be my biological daughter, but she is precious to me. How can I send back such a beloved daughter to someone who mistreats her? Robert added. I have no response to that. We are truly sorry. Throughout this conversation, both my father-in-law and Mike have been apologizing repeatedly, but MIL hasn't apologized once. You're the reason for all this, aren't you? How can you behave like this? Despite their apologies, MIL showed no remorse. Well, that's because, look, I've encountered a few people like you in my time, so I can pretty much guess. If I were you, I'd consider a divorce. Don't make decisions for me. You're the one being unreasonable here. Enough is enough. I'm telling you I will go to court if necessary, but I'm divorcing you. That's final. No, please. My father-in-law had indeed prepared divorce papers with his part filled out. He was ready to take legal action if MIL resisted. Finally grasping the seriousness of the situation, MIL reluctantly signed the divorce papers and relinquished half of the assets. My father-in-law seemed strangely relieved. Mike kept his promise to my mom and severed ties with MIL. Even my father-in-law distanced himself from her. After the divorce, MIL couldn't curb her shopping habits and quickly spent through her share of the assets. Despite trying to reach out to them multiple times, both were steadfast in blocking her out completely. Recently, I happened to see someone who resembled MIL. She had aged considerably, losing her once proud and arrogant demeanor, looking frail and fragile. Her whole presence had changed. Due to her behavior, she had always been kept at a distance. Now, after everything that happened, negative rumors about her were spreading like wildfire. It seemed no one was willing to help her anymore. It's said that she's finally feeling remorse for her actions. As they say, actions have consequences. A few days later, my father-in-law and Mike visited Robert with a box of chocolates to apologize. When I explained that MIL had disappeared, Robert and my mother cautioned them not to let it happen again. Afterward, I returned to Mike's family home. Since MIL left, my stress levels have dropped significantly. Not just me, but both my father-in-law and Mike also seemed to be much happier. Soon after, I found out I was pregnant, and the whole family was overjoyed. We are eagerly awaiting the arrival of our new family member.
Hello, I'm Alexis, 29 years old, and I navigate a delicate balance between my professional life at home and in the office. My husband, Bruce, who shares my age, has a deep affection for his mother, Doris. Unfortunately, Doris often treats me unkindly, which adds tension to our relationship. Despite these challenges, Bruce and I recently celebrated our second wedding anniversary, and I take pride in managing the complexities that come with it. Work has become my sanctuary, providing both an escape and a sense of fulfillment, leading to several promotions, an accomplishment not often seen among women in my field. Currently, I'm on a business trip in Europe for crucial meetings. During one of these meetings, my phone, which was on silent, vibrated insistently, a sign that something unusual was happening. I noticed 5 missed calls from Doris and felt a wave of concern. Thinking it might be an emergency, I decided to step outside to return her call. Just as I was about to dial, she called again. "Hello, Alexis, where are you?" she demanded, her annoyance evident. I hesitated, disliking her tone, but responded, "Hi, Doris, I'm in a meeting. Is everything okay?" "Where are you?" she repeated, impatience dripping from her words. Though her demeanor irritated me, I was determined to avoid confrontation. "I'm sorry, Doris. Didn't Bruce tell you? I'm on a business trip and can we talk later?" "Bruce mentioned it, but what are you doing leaving your house and husband alone? Come home immediately," she insisted, her abruptness as usual. "I can't leave right now. I'm in the middle of something important," I began to explain, but she cut me off. "You're so controlling, even though you're just Bruce's wife. I don't care about your excuses. Come home right now." Her sharp words stung, but I needed to keep my composure for the sake of my professional responsibilities. "Do you realize the significance of today?" I asked, bewildered. "Oh, you really don't know?" She smirked slightly. "We're celebrating my 62nd birthday today." Her tone dripped with expectation and triumph, catching me off guard. I remembered her birthday was later in the month, and this revelation was particularly surprising since I was on a business trip. Bruce and I had planned a special dinner at an upscale restaurant to celebrate her milestone. I was growing weary of Doris's incessant attempts to control every situation, which seemed to escalate every year, especially when I was busy with work. "As I mentioned, I can't come back home today. I'm away on business," I explained calmly. "That's amusing," she shot back sarcastically. "I spoke to Bruce earlier, and he's taken the day off for me. All the relatives will be there. But you're always buried in work. You seem so detached. How do you think that makes your husband's family feel?" Her words were meant to hurt, and I knew engaging further would only escalate the situation. Since I was still in a meeting, I had little choice but to end the call. "I'm sorry, but I can't attend your birthday celebration today," I said firmly. Doris's tone shifted, frustration evident in her voice. "Fine then. I won't consider you part of the family anymore. Don't bother coming back. It's like a divorce. Bruce deserves better." Her sharp remarks left me angry and distressed, but I refused to escalate the argument over the phone. "All right, we can discuss this when I get back. I'm sorry, but I need to go now," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "What's with that attitude?" Doris snapped back. "I told you not to come back. I'll talk to Bruce myself." With that, she hung up. Exhausted from my interaction with my mother-in-law, I returned to my meeting, letting out a deep sigh. After 3 grueling days of back-to-back meetings, I finally headed home, my mind consumed with anger and frustration from the confrontation with Doris. I barely registered the drive, lost in my thoughts. When I opened the front door and called out, my husband Bruce greeted me with a weary, "Welcome back." I slipped off my heels and made my way into the living room, leaving my luggage by the entrance. There, surrounded by a sea of cardboard boxes, I found Bruce, visibly sweating as he sealed them with tape. "What's with all the boxes?" I asked, my curiosity piqued. Bruce explained that they contained my belongings. He went on to recount how, during Doris's 62nd birthday celebration, the very day she had called me, she announced to everyone that I had neglected her birthday and been rude on the phone. To my shock, she told the relatives that she wanted me divorced and sent back to my parents' house because I wasn't a suitable match for her son. This was classic Doris. I pressed Bruce for more details. And then what happened? Did your mother tell you to get a divorce and you just agreed to it? No, I didn't exactly agree, Bruce replied, his voice weary. But she insisted I pack up your stuff. I felt cornered. What was I supposed to do? He paused his packing, looking defeated. What do you mean you didn't argue with her? Does this mean you're okay with the idea of us getting a divorce? My confusion and frustration were mounting. Bruce then shared that his father, Russell, had sided with Doris, telling him, if Doris is upset, it'll be hard on you. It's best to just do what she says. Bruce had reluctantly gone along with the idea of a divorce, leaving me stunned by how easily he seemed to accept his mother's demands. What is wrong with your family? I pondered aloud. Your father is dominated by your mother, and you just blindly obey her too. I felt utterly alone, as if no one was standing by me. After a long silence, Bruce finally spoke. What my mother decides is final, but it's only until she calms down and things settle. This divorce isn't real. I'll come for you when things get better. His eyes pleaded with me for understanding, and I wished he would direct that pleading towards his mother instead. How could a grown man like Bruce be so fearful of his mother? I thought, a mix of disappointment and disbelief washing over me. It felt like there was no salvaging this situation. I nearly felt ashamed as I questioned what I had ever seen in him. As I processed everything, I realized this might be an unexpected opportunity for liberation. Staying with Bruce meant facing Doris's antagonism and her constant insinuations about divorce. Parting ways might actually turn out to be a stroke of good fortune. I was more than capable of supporting myself, and living alone wouldn't mean deprivation of any kind. With this newfound clarity, I faced Bruce and said firmly, let's proceed with the divorce. After that, I dialed Doris's number. After several attempts, she finally answered. Hello, I said softly. As you wish, we're getting a divorce, I informed her. To my surprise, Doris's voice was unnaturally cheerful as she replied, yes. Finally, you realize you're not good enough for Bruce. I'm so relieved. Don't worry, I'll find him a new wife, someone obedient, pretty, and nice to her in-laws. Her words dripped with a misplaced sense of victory as she added, I'm sure Bruce will be just fine. I'll take care of him until he finds his next wife. You don't need to worry about that. Enduring her barrage of sarcasm, I retorted, well, don't misunderstand. It's not just about you. Still buoyed by her mood, Doris snapped back, oh, you're just a sore loser. Don't worry about me or Bruce, Alexis. I got the divorce papers from the city office and gave them to Bruce. Don't forget to sign them. With that, she hung up. Bruce, who had overheard my conversation, looked oddly relieved. This prompted me to question his awareness of the situation. By the way, does your mother know you're actually a full-time house husband? How could I tell her that? He replied, his tone turning serious. My mother is obsessed with the idea that I'm a high-ranking employee at a big company. Right, I acknowledged, reflecting on his behavior. It dawned on me that Bruce had never been transparent with Doris. At home, he lounged in worn-out sweatshirts but switched to a suit whenever he met her, pretending to be at work whenever she called. Elisa had proudly proclaimed at her birthday party that Bruce was such a devoted son, taking time off just to be there. She also boasted about his supposed status, claiming he could easily find a more obedient and attractive wife than me. This facade, maintained for the sake of appearances, was part of the bizarre dynamics that had steered our relationship to this point. The truth's revelation seemed inevitable once our divorce was finalized, but Doris, who held her son in such high esteem, would likely never anticipate that Bruce was no longer employed at the prestigious company he once worked for. In fact, he had left that job about a year ago. What Doris perceived as her elite, high-status son was now an unemployed, full-time house husband. Bruce's departure from his job stemmed from a significant mistake that led to a demotion, a pay cut, and a formal apology. He had likely kept this hidden from his mother, fearing her reaction. The setback had a profound effect on him, especially given Doris's tendency to coddle him. The mere thought of returning to an office environment and facing the repercussions of his error triggered immense anxiety and nausea. Initially, he tried to manage the situation by reporting his absences and requesting paid leave. But eventually, he stopped calling altogether. As his unauthorized absences piled up, he was terminated. Now, without any intention of seeking new employment, Bruce relied heavily on my income, knowing that sharing this with Doris would unleash both her fury and disappointment. I felt a twinge of regret at the thought of not witnessing Doris's reaction upon discovering her son's situation after my departure. I imagined she would be utterly shocked, perhaps even to an extreme degree. However, that was no longer my concern. When Bruce handed me the divorce papers, he mentioned that they were merely a facade to appease his mother. Okay, I said, processing the information. I promptly filed the papers and signed a lease for a new apartment, planning to move out as soon as possible. A month later, to my surprise, Doris called. Despite believing I had severed ties for good, curiosity got the better of me, and I answered, "What do you want now? Aren't you happy to be rid of me?" I asked, my voice tinged with sarcasm. "You're still the same. Just listen to me," Doris replied, her tone unchanged. As she spoke about Bruce, she revealed that since my departure, she had visited his apartment multiple times to help with chores, only to find him idly lounging in his room each time, with no indication of going to work or being ill. Suppressing a laugh, I responded nonchalantly, "Well, Bruce is like that because he has no intention of working again." Doris, seemingly oblivious to her role in the situation, shockingly asked, "Alexis, can you do something about it?" "Why should I? You didn't want me in your family and wanted nothing to do with me," I retorted. It was so typical of her to ask for help only when it suited her after having mistreated me for so long. The irony of the situation was not lost on me, and I felt a sense of vindication as I realized the full extent of her self-inflicted predicament. Doris then tried to pin the blame on me. "I was wondering if you said something to Bruce before you left." I was incredulous at her insinuation. "Really, Doris? You think I married Bruce just for a luxurious life? Why would the divorce hurt if that were true?" She eyed me suspiciously as if I had married Bruce solely for his wealth. "Are you kidding me? I was the one supporting Bruce financially throughout our marriage. It was me providing for him, not the other way around. Because of him, I couldn't even afford to live extravagantly," I continued, the thought crossing my mind of whether I should consider asking for alimony. Doris was taken aback by my statement. "How dare you make up something like that, Alexis? You just forgot to ask for alimony, didn't you? Bruce has a higher income and position than you. Don't be so unreasonable. If you want money, Bruce can pay whatever you want. After all, he is a high-level employee at a major company," she retorted, her argument as preposterous as ever. Perhaps Bruce had yet to tell her the truth. I didn't want to seem like I was merely gossiping. But I saw an opportunity to set the record straight. "Your proud son is a full-time house husband. He quit his job a long time ago," I revealed. "You're lying," Doris shouted, her voice so loud that I winced, fearing for my eardrums. Pulling the phone away from my ear, I suggested, "Why don't you check with his company? You'll find out who's telling the truth." Doris went silent for a moment, then her tone noticeably softened. "Well, what if that's true? How are we going to manage? I can't support my son on just my pension, and no one will want to marry him if he's unemployed. What are we going to do?" I couldn't help but grin at her sudden change of heart. "What shall we do?" I echoed, amusement lacing my voice. After a pause, she mumbled something to someone beside her, then, with a completely altered tone, she pleaded, "Hey Alexis, will you please come back home?" Her sudden shift puzzled me, but I replied firmly, "No, we're already divorced. I wouldn't come back to your family if heaven and earth turned upside down." The finality in my voice marked the end of that chapter as I moved on from the convoluted ties that had bound me. As I spoke to Doris, a commotion erupted in the background. Someone was shouting. It sounded like Bruce. His voice cut through the noise. "I told you I'd come for you when things settled down." Doris quickly responded, "Yes, you could remarry my son if you want it." "What are you talking about?" I asked, baffled. "No way. I wouldn't do it for the world. Don't joke about this." I made it clear to Doris that I had no interest in rekindling anything with her son or entangling myself in any more toxic dynamics. I was done with someone who was overly devoted to his mother. "I did what you asked, so please stop changing your mind," Doris retorted. But the tension was palpable, even through the phone. "It's not like you should take my words so seriously. You've been quite dismissive, haven't you?" she added. "I didn't think you'd go through with divorcing my son." Her tone revealed her surprise at my firm rejection. In response to Doris's string of excuses, I replied, "Well, I was just tolerating the situation. Besides, Bruce packed up my things and essentially kicked me out without my consent." I vented my frustration, listing all that she had orchestrated against me. "That was just a prank," she claimed nonchalantly. "A prank? It's worse than that. I said, utterly exasperated. There was nothing more to be said. Glancing at my watch, I noted it was nearly 2:00 p.m. My lunch break had been squandered on this fruitless conversation. "Ah, Doris, are you done now?" I asked, eager to wrap things up. "Alexis, what did you say?" she replied, her voice sickeningly sweet. Did she think a sweet tone would soften my response? Knowing that I wouldn't meet her expectations, I said firmly, "I'm going to hang up now. I have another meeting in a few minutes and need to review some documents." As I began to disconnect the call, Doris persisted. "Wait, Alexis. Hey, Alexis, say something." I could hear her shouting as I hung up, leaving the chaos and unwelcome entreaties behind me. I was ready to move forward, free from the turmoil that had entangled me for too long. During the chaos of our phone call, Doris took the opportunity to berate Bruce, chiding him for mishandling the situation and pointing out the consequences of his actions. It became evident that she was quick to blame everyone else for her troubles. Completely drained by her behavior, I ended the call and decided to block her number for good. Afterward, Bruce tried repeatedly to reach me. Seeing a clear path forward, I consulted my lawyer about seeking alimony. Faced with the prospect of legal action, Bruce's family, likely anxious about the ramifications, agreed to settle the alimony in a lump sum payment. It seemed my former in-laws had to advance the money, which left Russell and Doris constantly agitated with Bruce. They urged him daily to find a job, which only added to his frustrations. Ultimately, Bruce moved back into his parents' house because he could no longer afford his apartment rent. He blamed his parents for his situation, which strained their finances, including their pension and retirement savings. Like mother, like son, they continued to blame each other for their predicaments while refusing to reflect on their contributions to the mess they were in. They were even considering applying for welfare, a move I hoped would make them realize that their selfish behavior couldn't continue indefinitely. On a brighter note for me, the business proposal I made during my trip was accepted, leading to a significant contract. This achievement resulted in another promotion, a higher salary, and a more affluent lifestyle. Now, enjoying the freedom of a rich bachelor's existence, I was relieved to be free from the torment of in-laws and financial dependence on family members. Reflecting on the past, if I ever considered marriage again, I would undoubtedly conduct a thorough background check to avoid any mama's boys or troublesome in-laws.
Mom, what's that over there? When I returned home from my parents' house with my daughter, we were met with piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. As we approached, I realized that these bags contained my daughter's and my belongings, carelessly packed as if they were actual trash. Confused, I exclaimed, "What's this? Why is this happening?" My daughter tearfully pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from one of the bags and hugged it tightly. Frustrated, I marched towards the entrance, only to find that the locks had been changed while we were out. It became apparent that my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were behind this. Ringing the doorbell and knocking several times yielded no response. "What is this? Isn't it terrible?" I muttered. Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note that read, "Parasites disappear, never come back." A surge of anger welled up within me, and I couldn't help but express my frustration aloud. "The real parasites are you," I muttered. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 15 years. Not only me, but making my daughter feel this way too was unbearable. My patience exhausted, boiling with anger, I loaded our belongings into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. "I will never come back to this house again," I declared. "I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone." My name is Sarah. I am currently 43 years old. I live with my husband, daughter, and my husband's mother and sister. I can't say we live happily. I work from home, but this house is never peaceful. The issue lies with my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Diane. They have disliked and ignored me for over 10 years. As my daughter, Tracy, grew up, it bothered me less and less. I mainly work as a personal consultant. I started as a fortune teller, but as my blog became popular, I began receiving more consultations on attracting customers, leading to my current job. I met my husband, Kent, through a friend's introduction when I was training to be a fortune teller. I work in sales at a pharmaceutical company, and I also do affiliate marketing as a side job, which is finally starting to take off. Kent gave me enthusiastic advice on attracting customers when I expressed my struggles with fortune telling. Attracted by his kindness, we started dating and got married a year later. At that time, our income wasn't great, but Kent always supported me. I'm so glad I married Kent. I truly felt this way. Living with my in-laws began about a year after I got married. It started when my father-in-law, who had been healthy until then, suddenly passed away. My mother-in-law felt insecure about the future and asked my husband to live with us. We agreed to live together in exchange for her taking care of the household chores. Initially, my mother-in-law welcomed our living together and was happy. I hoped we would get along well, but I was mistaken. 2 months later, she began completely ignoring me, perhaps dissatisfied with me not helping with the housework. Soon, my sister-in-law, Diane, also started ignoring me. I didn't mind being ignored, but the challenging aspect with my mother-in-law was her tendency to involve others. Not only did Diane, my sister-in-law, hear about it, but even neighbors and relatives were informed that my daughter-in-law stays at home, but says she's working, leaving all the housework to me. If I say even a little, she talks back 100-fold, so I just ignore her. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law would suggest to others, "You better not talk to her too. It'll be troublesome." As a result, people around the in-laws' house began giving me only tepid responses to my greetings. I felt isolated, and it became very difficult. Despite my pleas to stop spreading strange rumors, my words were completely ignored. Although my mother-in-law's attitude softened slightly when my daughter Tracy was born 2 years after we started living together, her overall stance towards me hardly changed. However, she was very fond of Tracy, and having her help with household chores and childcare was a huge relief as my work became busier. Around the same time, my husband Kent's side business started to struggle, and he seemed unable to adapt to changes in the affiliate marketing market. He approached me saying, "Sarah, can you increase your contribution to the monthly expenses a bit?" I agreed, expressing that my consultations were increasing, and the new methods I implemented were working well. Despite my willingness to collaborate on ways to boost his sales, Kent insisted on handling it independently, saying, "I think I'll try it on my own. I'm really sorry." From the beginning of our marriage, we had agreed that Kent would manage the household finances. Initially, my income was low, so he allowed me to contribute more when my sales increased. I transferred money to Kent based on my monthly earnings, and he provided a fixed amount for living expenses in cash. Initially, I could only contribute $100, but now I could transfer up to $1,000, though not every month. I could contribute more if I dipped into savings. I knew Kent was struggling with his side business, but his pride prevented him from consulting me. He began spending more time at cafes after work, returning home later and later. When Tracy was about 5, Diane got married and moved out. Since she lived nearby, she often brought her son Ricky to our house during the day. When Ricky turned 1, Diane expressed her intention to start a part-time job. My mother-in-law gladly offered to take care of him until the evening. Diane was appreciative, saying, "Thank you, I'm so happy." However, as my mother-in-law began caring for Ricky at home, she became very fond of her grandson and started being cold towards Tracy. When they fought, my mother-in-law would scold Tracy, comparing her unfavorably to Ricky. Over time, Tracy started playing near me and began to dislike my mother-in-law's behavior. I spoke up, saying, "Talk to your mother. Tracy and Ricky are both her grandchildren. She should treat them the same. Tracy is already a big sister in elementary school." However, my mother-in-law's focus shifted, and she approached me saying, "Things are tough at the company right now. We might not get bonuses, so could you contribute a bit more?" Despite the challenges, my blog's client attraction was successful, and I started receiving more consultations as a consultant. earning far more than I did as a fortune teller. When Kent requested additional financial support, I responded, "I'm already contributing $2,000 a month. Isn't that enough?" "Yeah, I'm embarrassed to say, but my salary has decreased and the side business isn't going well." "Don't be secretive. We're a couple. We should support each other in tough times." "I'm really ashamed." "Thank you." Later, the amount I contributed gradually increased, and eventually I was transferring $4,000 a month to Kent. Still not wanting to hurt his pride, I let Kent continue to manage the finances. When Tracy was in 6th grade, Diane came back home with Ricky. It seems Diane got divorced due to her infidelity, but I don't know the details. By this time, Tracy could help around the house, so household chores were divided among each family, being ignored by my mother-in-law, and Diane continued, but it no longer bothered me. It's unfortunate that I couldn't give Tracy her own room when she started middle school, as Diane's return meant we ran out of rooms. One night, while discussing which tutoring school Tracy should attend for middle school, Diane suddenly said, "Hey, tutoring is expensive. Why doesn't Tracy study by herself? Could you stop making such comments? I'm paying for the tutoring, so it's none of your business what Sarah's paying." "Impossible. You don't earn anything. Kent said he's supporting you. You're just a leech, aren't you? Ha, you married him because he has money, right?" "Exactly. Kent told me not to speak ill of Sarah, who can turn, but that's just shameless." My mind was filled with questions. What does this mean? What has Kent been telling his mother and the others? Kent is the one supporting this house financially. It's about time we put an end to the parasite's lifestyle. I feel bad for Tracy, but if we pay for her tutoring, we won't be able to pay my compensation. Not be able to pay? Are you saying our house is paying for your compensation, Diane? Kent said he would pay for it. You should spend your money on Ricky. I began to understand the deception and felt my anger rising. My husband had always managed our household finances, and my mother-in-law had taken care of the household chores and child care until Tracy grew up. So I thought they knew I was also contributing to the household expenses. Is Kent bearing all the expenses of this house, including your living expenses and the compensation Diane is supposed to pay? Be quiet. It's only natural for a family. You're the only outsider here, not related by blood, and yet you act as if living here is your right. It really makes me angry. I contribute money too. Don't talk back. What you contribute is barely enough for your own food expenses. You hardly have any income, and yet you're so arrogant. I could feel my body trembling with anger. I could see Tracy on the side, looking like she might cry. I knew Kent had a lot of pride, but I never thought it would be this bad. Certainly, in the beginning, Kent was paying for the living expenses and pocket money for my mother-in-law and Diane, but I had started contributing as well, and now we were living on my income. I needed to talk to Kent properly. Around midnight, Kent came home. He was drunk and seemed cheerful. "Can we talk? I didn't know you weren't getting any money from your mother or Diane. They said you're covering all the expenses of this house." About that? My bad. It's a matter of pride as a man, you know? When we started living together, I was paying for everything. There wasn't a right moment to say you were also paying, and in front of the family, let me be the eldest son a little, please. Kent, with a light-hearted tone like in a comedy sketch, put his hands together. "Oh, that's right. I'm going to come in this Saturday. I'll be gone for a week. Take care." "Conan? Why?" "I got invited to a seminar in Conan by a friend I'm doing a side business with. I'm going to make it a success, so cheer for me, Sarah." "Well, I'm off to sleep. See you tomorrow." My husband lay down on the mat in a cheerful mood and soon started snoring. My anger wouldn't subside, but recently, with Kent coming home late, we hadn't talked much, and I had no idea about this. I thought he was joking while drunk, but on the weekend, Kent really left with a large suitcase. During Kent's absence, I had the freedom to use the car, so I decided to take Tracy back to my parents' house. The next day, a shocking event awaited us. Mom, what is that? When Tracy and I returned from my parents' house, there were piles of trash bags in front of the entrance. Upon closer inspection, these bags contained mine and Tracy's belongings, carelessly packed just like real trash. What is this? Why is this happening? I don't understand. Tracy, crying, pulled out her beloved stuffed animal from the bag and hugged it. Furious, I headed towards the entrance. Huh? Has the lock changed? It seemed that the locks had been changed while we were out. This must be the work of my mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Diane. I rang the doorbell and knocked several times, but no one came out. What is this? Isn't it terrible? Upon closer inspection, one of the trash bags had a note saying, "Parasites disappear, never come back." I felt a surge of anger from the bottom of my heart. The real parasites are you. I couldn't help but let out a swear word. This was the worst treatment I had ever received from my in-laws in 15 years. Not just me, but making my daughter feel this way too. I finally lost my patience with boiling anger. I loaded the luggage into the car, and we returned to my parents' house. I will never come back to this house again. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens to the parasites when their host is gone. When we returned to my parents' house, they were shocked. I hadn't told them about the ignoring from my in-laws, the money issues, and most of all, their attitude towards Tracy. Not wanting to worry them, my parents said, "There's no need to go back to that house. You should claim compensation from them." They cried with anger and told me to stay with them. My mother's words, "You really had it tough," made me cry too. In reality, I had been trying my best all this time. Enough is enough. I finally decided to confront my feelings while staying at my parents' house. I contacted a friend who had introduced me to Kent. She was connected to Kent's side business friends. "Are you doing well? I want to ask you something. Do you know if Kent's friends are currently in Conan, that famous entrepreneur seminar, right?" I was invited but wasn't interested, so I declined. "Kent didn't go, did he?" "Yeah, that's right. By the way, I heard Kent quit his job and is now managing a business with his wife. You two must be close." Yes, that's right." Nonchalantly, I replied and hung up immediately. After I called Kent's company, what my friend said was true, and to my surprise, Kent had quit his job 2 years ago. This meant that for the past 2 years, I had been paying almost all of the living expenses for my in-laws. Looking back over the years, I suddenly felt hollow. A week later, I received a laid-back message from Kent saying he was back in the US. After continuously ignoring him, I stopped hearing from him altogether. He must have heard the news back home. Expecting persistent contact from Kent, I hired a detective to investigate him. The investigation revealed that Kent, dressed in a suit in the morning, spent his afternoons gambling and evenings at a woman's house. So I asked for an investigation into his infidelity as well. 3 weeks later, Kent called me. It must have been close to his former company's payday, and he was panicking. "Sarah, sorry I couldn't contact you. I'm sorry for what my family did. I heard they kicked you out, and I was thinking, why did it come to this? Really? Did you tell the truth to your mother and Diane?" Kent quickly changed the subject and said something unbelievable. "Let's leave that house and live in a new home, just the 3 of us. I'll cut ties with those who disregard you, Sarah. I'm ready to abandon my mother and Diane, so please come back." Are you really cutting ties with your mother and Diane? Was Kent planning to easily discard them after making them dependent on him? I was disappointed in Kent and his self-centered actions, so I told him, "I'm coming back for now, so leave the door unlocked." Kent seemed delayed at my message. A few days later, I returned to my in-laws' house with Tracy. Kent, his mother, and Diane were there, but Ricky was nowhere to be seen. I was relieved that Ricky didn't have to witness the adults' ugly arguments. When Kent made some remarks, I ignored the displeased pair and took out a divorce form from my bag. I confronted the surprised Kent. "I heard you quit your job without telling me. Since we're supposedly managing a business together, Does that mean the $4,000 I've been transferring every month was actually your salary? Kent tried to excuse himself. No, that's not it. I told you the business was in trouble, right? So, I decided to quit before getting fired. Carly, I heard you quit 2 years ago, right? I called your company, and it's still not bankrupt. Kent fell silent. I pressed further. By the way, what role do you play in our joint business management? Are you the accountant? Kent became increasingly uneasy and started sweating. Kent is supporting the whole family, isn't he, Mother? He quit his job. His side business isn't going well. And yet it's a mystery where the money is coming from. I'm leaving, but please continue to get financial support from Kent. My mother-in-law and Diane's faces turned pale and ashen. But the other day on the phone, you were crying and begging to save only yourself, saying you'd cut ties with your mother and sister. Haha, but that won't happen. I'm also discarding Kent here. What do you mean? I don't understand. Kent hasn't been going to work. That's a lie. He leaves in a suit, and Sarah was supporting the household. It's true. Sarah has been paying for everything for years. I'm unemployed now and not doing any side business. We're going to have a hard life because you guys kicked Sarah out. We could have had an easy life without working if you hadn't done anything unnecessary. What do you mean by that? You were planning to abandon us, weren't you? Kent's response ignited the fury of my mother-in-law and Diane. As the three of them caused a commotion, Tracy and I began to take action. I came to pick up some forgotten items. I took a cleaning robot bought within the last 6 months, an expensive microwave favored by my mother-in-law, and the beauty device Diane had gotten from Kent. Wait, that's mine. This is mine since I bought it with my money, or you can pay me back for it. Diane fell silent at my words. Then I searched for and gathered my belongings from their rooms. The belongings they had put out did not include my expensive brand bags and accessories. Why are you taking that too? This is mine. I ignored their complaints and sweet talk. Finally, I dropped a bombshell on Kent. Oh, I forgot. I plan to claim compensation from your mistress, Mary, too. Tell her it's no use running away. What? How do you know about her? I know you went to Conan with Mary recently. Good for you, right? Of course, I have all the evidence of the affair, so no escaping that. No way. You've been deceiving me and having fun for the past 2 years. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair, child support for Tracy, and oh, you were secretly paying Diane's compensation too. I'll be claiming that back as well. As I prepared to leave, my mother-in-law and Diane desperately tried to stop me. I was wrong, Sarah. I'm sorry. We just believed what Ken said. We can't live without you. We'll do anything. Please help us. I can't pay you back for the compensation. I'm sorry too. I apologize for everything. You'll forgive us, right? I couldn't help but laugh at their foolish faces. They finally realized who had been supporting their lifestyle, realizing too late that their non-blood related support was gone. Let's just ignore these people, Mom. Let's go home. Yes, that's right. Kent, you'll be hearing from the lawyer soon. Please take care of it. Leaving a dejected Kent behind, we returned home with the items we had collected. Later, my divorce with Kent was finalized, and I demanded compensation through a lawyer. I received numerous apologies and pleas for reconciliation from my mother-in-law and Diane, but I ignored them all. Surprisingly, there was still some inheritance left from Ken's father. The fact that they had been living off my money without using their own angered me again. However, the inheritance wasn't enough for the compensation, and ultimately, they had to sell the house to make a lump sum payment. Naturally, this included the compensation I had been paying for Diane. After selling the house, I don't know what became of Ken's family. I hope Ken can take care of his family, but ultimately, he will choose his path. I also claimed compensation from Kent's mistress, which led to an unexpected revelation. Through the lawyer, I informed her that Kent was unemployed, and I had been supporting the family. Kent had deceived her, claiming he was an entrepreneur with a successful business. In the end, They broke up after an argument. Tracy and I moved to an apartment, and I was able to give her the room she had longed for. I don't think my 15 years were wasted, but sometimes I wonder if I should have made a decision when I started being ignored. Now, I feel happy that my home is a peaceful place.
My mother-in-law took my passport and burned it. It went up in flames quickly and turned to ashes. Now I can't go on my vacation to St. Bert's Island. I was shocked and asked, "What's going on?" She smirked and said, "You're a stranger here, so you'll be staying home," while my husband grinned too. I was horrified by their cruel trick. I knew they might do something like this, but I didn't expect them to be so sneaky. They looked pleased with themselves and even laughed in a nasty way. Then I told them who I really am. My name is Tyra, I'm 29, and I study linguistics at university. Since graduating, I've been learning about different languages and cultures and sharing what I know. My organization sends me on trips abroad, and when that happens, I'm gone for a few months. When I first started this job, I thought marriage wasn't something I'd ever do. But when I went back to my home country at 26, I met Corey, who eventually became my husband. Because of my job, I only see him for a few months at a time before I had to travel again. We stayed in touch with phone calls and emails while I was away. 2 years later, at 28, we got married. Even after our wedding, I continued to spend half the year working abroad, so we were apart a lot. I'm thankful he chose to marry me despite this. Today, I'm heading home from the airport. It's the first time I'll see my husband in 5 months. I should be tired, but I'm excited and walking quickly. When I got home, Corey wasn't there yet, so I started tidying up. I always tell him to keep the place clean, but it's a bit messy. Normally, this would upset me, but today I'm willing to overlook it because I'm just happy to see him. While I'm cooking, I hear the front door open. Corey walks in, and I rush to greet him. "Corey, welcome home. It's so good to see you." "Oh, hi, Tyra. You're back. Is that all you can say? We haven't seen each other in 5 months." "Well, we've been living like this for a while, so I'm used to it." "What? Can't you at least say you missed me?" "Oh, what? I'm tired. Anyway, is dinner ready?" "Yeah, I just finished cooking. Let's eat." Eating with my husband after so many months feels like the best meal ever. Normally, I'd be happy with just this, but today feels a bit different. "Hey, Corey, why do you keep staring at your phone?" "What? What's the problem?" "Nothing's wrong, but I'm finally home." "You've been glued to your phone and haven't really talked to me. We've been in touch through calls and emails all this time, haven't we?" "There's nothing new to talk about now." "That might be true, but it's been a long time since we've seen each other like this." "So why?" My frustration with my husband's attitude makes my voice rise. It looks like my comment upset him. He stood up, put his phone on the table, and glared at me. "You know what? You were just on a plane, but I'm exhausted from work." "Got it?" "Hold on. I also jumped on a plane right after work. Didn't you talk to me like that?" "I didn't ask you to do that. You just rushed home on your own." "What? You don't have to say it like that. I missed you. I'm just saying I didn't ask you to come home. If you're going to be like this, don't come back at all. You're being annoying, Tyra." He slammed the table and stormed out of the living room, leaving his dinner untouched. What's wrong with him? Why is he being so cold? I haven't seen him in a long time. Was I the only one excited to see him? What's the point of coming home early if it's like this? Tears fell from my eyes and onto the table. Our reunion was even more disappointing than I had feared. The next day, his attitude didn't improve. When I greeted him with a good morning, he looked at me coldly. "I envy you," he said. "You get to relax at home all the time while I'm stuck working." "That's not true," I replied. "I have a lot of work to do, like summarizing our activities and preparing for the next training session. It's a lot of work, more than you think. Either way, it's something you can do at home. I wish I had a job where I could spend half the year like that." "You don't have to talk like that." "Well, I'm just a company guy, so I have to go to work. You enjoy your time at home, princess." "What the heck, Corey?" Ignoring me, my husband left the house. We had a few arguments before we got married. But he had never been this sarcastic. I was really confused by his behavior and wondered if his words were causing problems between us. I thought about what I might do to improve the situation. While I was going through work materials, I decided to tidy up the house. As I was vacuuming and changing the bed linens, my phone rang. It was my mother-in-law. Feeling uneasy, I answered the call. "Hello, Tyra here." "Hi, Tyra. It's been a while. I heard you're back home and that you arrived yesterday." "Yes, that's right. And I also heard you upset Corey." He was quite angry. "I'm sorry, but it's nothing that should concern you. Well, since you're back, how about we plan a family trip?" "What?" I was taken aback by her suggestion. Before I could respond, my mother-in-law continued. "I was just talking with my husband about going to St. Bert's Island, and Corey mentioned he wanted to join us." "What? So Tyra, you're used to traveling abroad, right? Could you help us with hotel reservations and other arrangements?" "Me? Or are you having trouble understanding what your mother-in-law is asking you to do?" Her voice grew colder. It was clear she didn't really want to travel with me. She just thought it would be easier for her since I'm experienced with travel. I knew my mother-in-law didn't have a high opinion of me. She'd been sarcastic ever since we first met at the wedding reception. Even after 2 years of marriage, things hadn't changed. I often received messages from her while I was working abroad. "How can you be a wife and stay away from home for months? If you don't take care of the house, I'd rather my son marry someone else. It was a mistake to let him marry you." That's the kind of text I used to get from her. So I had a bad feeling about this call. I never imagined I'd be used for planning a family vacation. But maybe it's better than the usual verbal abuse. I was frustrated with myself for not being able to say no, even though I knew I was being used. A few hours later, my husband came home from work in a much better mood than earlier. He tossed his briefcase on the sofa and, smiling widely, called out to me. "Mom called, didn't she? We can go on a trip to St. Bert's." "Yeah, I heard. But you know what?" "What? You're not thinking of turning it down, are you?" "Mom wants you to come with us, I understand, but why don't you just go with your mom and dad like you originally planned?" As soon as I said that, my husband's demeanor changed. He clicked his tongue and his tone became more threatening. "You need to understand your role here. The only time you're useful to us is when we're traveling. You don't have to speak like that." "It's true, isn't it? Anyway, you'll handle all the flight and hotel bookings, and everything should be in my name, as you probably know." "What, Corey? You're going to pay for the whole trip?" "What are you talking about? We'll split the cost 50-50ths. It's a small price to pay to show respect to our parents." "What is that supposed to mean? If you've got time to lounge around at home, make the reservations now." "This isn't right. I don't want to." "What are you mumbling about?" My husband grabbed a beer from the fridge and drank it in one gulp. I had a lot on my mind, but I wasn't sure what might happen if I resisted. I felt embarrassed, but I had no choice but to do what my husband and mother-in-law wanted. I made all the arrangements for the flights and accommodations for the trip to St. Bert's, just as my husband had ordered. On the day of the trip, I was set to pick them up at my in-laws' house and head straight to the airport. A few days before the trip, I couldn't sleep. In the middle of the night, I noticed my husband, who was supposed to be next to me, wasn't there. I went to the living room and heard him talking on the phone with someone. "Oh, it's okay. It's all okay, Mom. I'll be there first thing in the morning as planned." "Mom, please handle the passport issue anyway. Seriously, I'm looking forward to it. I'll make sure to introduce her to you when I get back." I was puzzled by some of what he said. Passport, introducing her. Since he called her Mom, I was pretty sure he was talking to my mother-in-law. It seemed like there was something going on between them that I didn't know about. In the first place, it didn't sit right with me that he wanted me to go on this trip. What could they be planning if I went to my in-laws' house? I didn't have all the details, but I decided to stay extremely cautious until the day of the trip. The day of our trip to St. Bert's finally arrived. I packed my carry-on and handbag, which included my husband's things as well. With everything ready, my husband and I headed to my in-laws' house. I braced myself for whatever was coming, knowing I had to deal with it. When we arrived at my in-laws' house, my mother-in-law was the only one to greet us. "Oh, hi, Tyra. It's been a while. Good to see you. We're almost ready. I'm going to grab a few things for the trip, so it might be a little while." "Okay, take your time. Oh, and Tyra, could you bring the carry-on case from the other room?" It's heavy, so please get Corey to help you. Sure, I'll do that. I noticed when my husband and mother-in-law exchanged knowing looks. I kept my passport in my pocket just in case. Following my husband's instructions, I carried the carry-on case back into the living room. There was my mother-in-law, smiling with a hint of mischief. She was holding my passport and grinning. "Now you can't go on the trip to St. Bert's," she said. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to burn this passport right now." "What did you just say?" "I was just using you to handle the trip arrangements." "What are you doing?" "You're a stranger here, so you'll be staying behind." "Too bad." She went to the kitchen, lit the passport with a lighter, and watched it burn. The passport started to turn to black ashes in the sink. Once it was completely destroyed, she said, "We did it." My husband cheered. "Yeah, Mom, we made it." "No," I said. "It's just the three of us on this trip. We'll get to meet Corey's new girlfriend when we get back, right?" "Yeah, I've already set that up," my mother-in-law replied. "We don't need this useless woman anymore," my father-in-law said. "You know when something isn't working." He pulled out his cell phone and showed me pictures of himself with another woman, looking pleased with himself. "I'm not divorcing you for the sake of my reputation, but you'll be staying here while we go on our trip. When we get back, I'll move in with her, and you can leave." My mother-in-law laughed mockingly at his words. Their expressions were full of malice. At that moment, I knew I didn't belong in a family like this anymore. I forced a smile and said, "By the way, whose passport is that?" "What are you talking about?" "It's yours, of course." "I took it out of your handbag, so it's your passport." "My passport is right here," I said, holding it up. "What? Why? It can't be." I pulled my passport from my pocket and showed it to her. My mother-in-law's face went pale as she stared at me in panic. "That's not possible," she said, her voice trembling. "Yes, it's my passport. See for yourself." It seemed that my mother-in-law had snuck into my handbag and mistakenly thought she'd have found my passport. How could she have burned it without checking properly, especially with her malicious plans? "Whose passport did I burn then?" she asked, her voice quivering. "I guess it was your son's passport that was in there." "So you burned my son's passport?" she asked, horrified. My mother-in-law turned white and began to tremble. My husband, furious, started blaming her. "Mom, what have you done? I told you to be careful. I only found one passport in her handbag. Who would have thought it belonged to me? I don't care. You didn't check properly, and now look what happened. You're saying it's my fault? If you had checked from the start, I wouldn't have made this mistake. What the hell?" Before long, they were blaming each other. I was furious and disgusted by their behavior. "Hey, Tyra, do something." My husband yelled at me, but I was not about to back down. "Seriously, who do you think you are? Telling you what to do. You cheated on me behind my back. How dare you? Both you and your mother are despicable." "Hey, who do you think you're talking to?" "I'm talking to you and your awful mother. Don't think I'm just going to let this slide. You're going to pay me back for the affair and all the nasty things your mother has said to me. Be ready." Just then, my father-in-law came downstairs. "What's going on? What are you doing?" When I told my father-in-law everything, he was furious. The trip was canceled, my mother-in-law got a divorce, and my husband was disowned by his father and banned from coming home. I consulted a lawyer, and we finalized the divorce. I also demanded alimony from both my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law. They had to pay the alimony in one lump sum and cover the cost of canceling the trip to St. Bert's. Since they didn't save any money, they had to borrow to cover the alimony. In the end, they managed to repay everything by borrowing funds. Now my ex-husband lives with his mother and it looks like they are struggling financially. He was also dumped by the woman he had an affair with. As for me, I used the alimony money to move into a condo and enjoy living alone. After all the cheating and mistreatment, I went through many difficulties, but now I'm free and loving life. I plan to continue traveling, learning about different cultures, and sharing my experiences with the world. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.
Oh, indeed. Is it true that you've acquired a house? If so, I'd be interested in living with you. Unexpectedly, my mother-in-law started uttering such an absurd proposition over the phone. She must have caught wind of our recent home purchase from my husband. I could discern my sister-in-law's amused chuckles in the background. Does she believe her laughter can go unnoticed? Honestly, I have no desire to reside with my mother-in-law and the others. I thought my husband shared the same sentiment. However, the fact that they've been informed about our new house. Could it be that they're assuming we'll be living together? The idea that my beloved husband might be in cahoots with them fills me with a bit of apprehension. Yet, I have no intention of yielding to their wishes. Are they trying to manipulate me? If that's their game, I'll reverse the roles. Reflecting on all my past tribulations, I pledged revenge against them. I am Kate Thompson, 30 years old, working as an ordinary employee at a major financial corporation. I married my husband Joe 3 years ago, and though we don't have children yet, there's a valid reason for that. A decision we both took seriously. Joe and I are fully committed to our careers, toiling daily with the aim of advancing. Once our professional lives stabilize, we plan to build our own home and create a stable environment for raising children. We've agreed to revisit the topic of having kids once our careers settle down. This was a decision we made earnestly, sharing our genuine feelings and thoughts. We do aspire to have children eventually, and now, as we prepare for that, I find myself recalling all my past struggles. Then, one day, I successfully executed a well-planned project at work, and my promotion was officially confirmed. While my salary was already sufficient, the promotion brought even more comfort to our lives. On the other hand, Joe, although not promoted, received a substantial salary increase due to his years of service. With both our incomes on the rise, I felt it was time to turn our long-held dream into reality. So I broached the topic with Joe. Joe, I want to talk to you. Over the past year, both of us have had stable incomes. I think it might be time to consider getting our own home. What do you think? Oh, is it time already? From his excited voice, I could tell Joe was thrilled. Actually, I've been thinking about it too. But since I haven't been promoted yet, I felt a bit hesitant to bring it up. Don't worry about that. It's not like only one of us needs to earn money. I was thinking it might be okay to build our home in my name. Really? Well, you do earn more now. If you're okay with it, let's build our home in your name. All right, let's proceed with that. Let's go see some model houses on our next day off. Sounds great. Let's go. We shouldn't miss this opportunity. I really feel grateful for choosing Joe at times like this, as we share the same values. The following week, we made an appointment to view model homes as planned. We looked at various types of houses, expanding our vision for our own home. On weekends, we began creating simple floor plans together, researching online. During a recent visit to a construction company, they suggested that instead of leaving everything to them, it's better if we create our own image for a more satisfying home. So Joe and I started building that image. However, neither of us has much knowledge of architecture or design. Even with research, it takes time to put it into practice. While taking breaks, we continued working, and then the doorbell rang. I thought it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, my mother-in-law was standing there. Unexpectedly, Mother, what brings you here so suddenly like this? My mother-in-law sometimes visits our place without notice. She glared at me and, without a word, took off her shoes and went into the house on her own. I'm here, Joe. Mom, what's up? Surprised by his mother's call, Joe showed a startled reaction. Did you have some business around here? To Joe's question, his mother looked a bit perplexed. Yes, I told Kate about it over the phone a little while ago, but it seems Joe didn't know. I see, maybe Kate forgot to tell me. Seems like it. Kate, even though she's still young, has a terrible memory. That's not true, Mom. It's not forgetfulness. Kate is incredibly busy with work, and at the same time, she takes care of the household. Her mind is always full of things to do. You're such a kind boy, Joe. If your late father were here, he definitely wouldn't have forgiven that. I really respect Kate from the bottom of my heart. So, Mom, why did you come here today? To Joe's question, his mother smiled contentedly. Then, she slowly took out a travel brochure from her bag, spread a page with a post-it note on the table, and showed it. Listen, Joe. I've always wanted to go to Niagara Falls. Won't you take me, please? My mother-in-law began to say such things excitedly out of the blue. Caught off guard by the sudden request, both Joe and I were left staring at her, mouths agape. My mother-in-law, relentless, kept pressing Joe, who was clearly flustered. Come on, Joe, you agree, right? Think of it as a way to show filial piety. Wait a minute, Mom. I'm in trouble if you suddenly say you want to go on a trip, though you can come too. Actually, I was thinking of going with Claire, but if Joe wants to go, I'm delighted to turn it into a family trip. Claire is Joe's sister. What are you talking about? Kate is here, and I can't get time off from work. But it's strange for me to pay for a trip for you and my sister, right? Not strange at all. Spending money for the family is a wonderful thing, don't you think so, Kate? Suddenly turning to me, my mother-in-law sought my agreement. Though shaken, I firmly expressed my opinion to her. Well, using one's own money for family isn't bad, but I think imposing it on others is different. What do you mean by that? Are you saying I'm trying to extort travel expenses from Joe? I didn't mean to say it in such a harsh way, but listening to you, it sounded like you just wanted us to pay for the trip, Kate. That's terrible. I had no such intention, but you're making me out to be the villain in front of Joe. I'm so shocked. That's not. I didn't mean to call you a villain. I just answered honestly to what was asked. Okay, no need for excuses, Kate. Why are you so heartless? You must not like me, do you? My mother-in-law, visibly upset, glared at me with icy cold eyes. It always turns out like this when she comes over. She always finds some reason to demand money and then squanders it with Claire, Joe's sister. Spending money for the family sounds nice, but what my mother-in-law does is practically extortion. The situation is entirely different when Joe gives them money out of kindness. No matter that they're family, I never really liked Joe's brazen mother and sister. According to Joe, his mother and sister became so selfish after his father passed away. Joe's father died when he was in high school, and since then, they have lived as a trio. While his strict father was alive, he watched over the finances. But with his departure, there was no one to stop them, and they even freely spent the life insurance money. Also, since Claire works part-time, not as a full-time employee, her salary is low, and their life is always on the edge. So this is why she regularly visits our house, making excuses like life is tough, or I want to relax and travel somewhere to extort money from Joe. Before marrying Joe, it seemed he was at the mercy of his mother and her demands after his father's death. A sense of dependence for being cared for by his mother had bound Joe. However, since marrying me, Joe seems to be gradually realizing their true nature. Even when repeatedly asked for money, recently he's been trying hard to refuse. For Joe, that's quite a growth. Moreover, he has recently become able to speak back firmly to his mother. To my mother-in-law's spiteful words like, "You don't like me, do you? Or why should I for such an uncharming daughter-in-law?" Joe responded clearly. Just because you're my mother doesn't mean you can speak badly of Kate. Didn't Kate just answer what you asked her, Mom? You're taking Kate's side. What are you talking about? I think you're in the wrong here, Mom. That's so unfair. Surely Kate must have poisoned your mind against me. Poor thing, you were such a kind child before we got married. I'm telling you that's not it. I'm saying this because I think so. Joe's firm response surprised my mother-in-law, who was not used to being talked back to like that. With a frustrated look, biting her lower lip, she said, "Fine," and left. Kate, I'm sorry. I'd always make you feel uncomfortable. No, it's okay. You stood up for us this time. Once we build our own home, we'll be further away. Let's not interact with Mom and them. Then yeah, that would be a relief. If you're okay with it, Joe, I'm grateful. The place we are considering for our new home is quite far from our current apartment, improving the convenience to both of our workplaces. Our current apartment is about 5 train stations away from Joe's parental home, but the new house will be 3 times farther and require transfers. The route from the station is also complex, so if we don't give them the address, they won't be able to find our new home. It's a good chance to cleanly break off our relationship with my mother-in-law. Later, we submitted our imagined floor plan to the construction company, and the construction started 2 months later. After about half a year, our $500,000 dream home was completed. We managed to squeeze some time from our busy work schedules to pack a few days before the move. I received a call from my mother-in-law on my smartphone. Busy packing. I turned on the speaker and answered the phone. "Hello," I said, and my mother-in-law started speaking in an unusually high-pitched voice. "Kate, when are you moving? You bought a house, right? I want to live with you." Suddenly, on the phone, my mother-in-law began to say such an outrageous thing. She must have heard about our new home purchase from Joe. I could hear Claire, my sister-in-law, chuckling in the background. "That's great. We can make Kate work for us every day. Mom, you came up with a good idea." Do they think their words aren't reaching me? It's clear they plan to piggyback on our move. I imagine them planning to use me for an easy life. Honestly, I have no intention of living with them. I thought Joe felt the same, but telling them about the new house. Could it be that they're assuming we'll live together? The thought that my beloved Joe might be in league with them fills me with a bit of fear. But I have no intention of letting them have their way. They're probably trying to use me, right? If that's the case, I'll turn it around and use them. I told them the date of our move. Then my mother-in-law and Claire said, "We'll come to the apartment in the afternoon on that day. Take us with you in the car, and arrange the movers for us too." They hung up after making their demands. But of course, I have no intention of complying. For now, I'll check the facts with Joe. As I was about to go and tell Joe this, he was already standing behind me. "Joe, you were there. I came to say we should take a break, but was that Mom on the phone just now?" "Ah, yes. I was going to talk to you about it too." "Why did you tell your mother about our new home?" "It's not like that. Actually, when Mom came over last time, she seems to have seen the floor plan of our new house. She kept pestering me about it every day. So, I just... Kate, I'm really sorry." "I see. So you don't intend to live with your mother, right?" "Of course not. After hearing that phone call, I'm even thinking it's better to cut ties with her." Joe's expression was filled with more anger than ever. It was the first time I had seen him this angry. From what Joe told me, my mother-in-law had seen the layout of our new home and was convinced it was a spacious house. She had pretended to be interested and called Joe repeatedly, asking him about the number of rooms and details of the facilities. But it seems that Joe is on my side, which relieved me. Then there's no problem at all. This made me determined to get my revenge on my mother-in-law. I've had enough of her saying whatever she wants, but it's goodbye to that now. I'll make sure to settle this properly. And so, the day of the move arrived. Joe and I had the movers transport our things in the morning and headed to our new home in our car. By the time we finished moving everything, it was already past 1:00 p.m., checking our phones while taking a break. We saw dozens of missed calls from my mother-in-law. "She called me too," Joe said, sounding weary. Then, my mother-in-law called again. I answered the phone with the speaker still on. Hello, Kate. Where are you? I told you I'd be at the apartment in the afternoon, didn't I?" Yes, you did say that. So what can I do for you?" "What do you mean? You didn't arrange for the movers. I've been waiting at home, and not a single truck has shown up. So I had to go to your apartment myself." "Is that so? Well, that's too bad. You know, I didn't arrange for any movers." "What? That's not the agreement. Where is your new house?" "Huh? You really think I'd tell you?" After saying that clearly, my mother-in-law uttered a dumbfounded huh. She probably thought that as long as Joe was there, she could always have her way. But Joe is different now. He's my precious ally, trying to cut off the bad ties with his family. Determined to release all my pent-up feelings, I spoke firmly. Just to let you know, neither Joe nor I have any intention of living with the two of you from now on. Please don't involve yourselves in our lives. What are you saying? Your opinion doesn't matter. It's up to Joe to decide. At least tell me where the new house is right now. Huh? How are you going to get here without even knowing the address? This house is in my name. I have the right to decide who lives here. If you two just barge in, it's trespassing, and I'll sue you right away. What? Trespassing? How rude to say that about your husband's family. At that point, Joe spoke up in a deathly cold voice. Family? My father, who was a family member, is already gone, isn't he? What are you saying, Joe? After hearing that last phone call, I'm utterly fed up with you two. Just having a blood relation with you is embarrassing. From now on, my family is only Dad and Kate. I no longer consider you two as my family. Wait, Joe, don't say such things. Don't bother us again, got it? With that, Joe hung up without waiting for her reply. He swiftly set his phone to block her calls. Hey, Joe, are you really okay with this? Yeah, I finally realized that Mom was just using me to her advantage. I feel completely relieved now. Joe looked truly refreshed, sincerely believing what he said. That's how we, as a couple, managed to cut off the bad ties with my mother-in-law and sister. Afterwards, they had to change their lifestyle drastically, as Joe stopped supporting them completely. Without any contact with Joe, they lost their fallback option. Later on, my sister-in-law's part-time income wasn't enough, and my mother-in-law had to start working part-time as well. Being a housewife for so long, she wasn't used to the working environment and was clumsy, often being disliked at her workplace. Meanwhile, we live a peaceful life in our new home, with no sudden visits from my mother-in-law anymore. We are truly stress-free. I'm endlessly grateful to Joe for believing in me and cutting ties with his toxic blood relatives. We might face various challenges in the future, but even then, I trust Joe, and we will support each other and walk through life together.
I grew up in a loving and ordinary family surrounded by good friends. Everything about me was pretty average: my looks, my academics, and my athletic abilities. However, I felt incredibly fortunate to have supportive people around me. Perhaps because of this, I tend to trust people a bit too easily. This trait has often led people to call me naive or overly trusting. This story is about my troublesome mother-in-law, who often bullied her trusting daughter-in-law. My name is Mary. I'm 31 years old and work as a salesperson. My husband Jake and I got married just a year ago, so I still feel like a newlywed. I used to think about starting a family and would often say, let's have a baby. But truthfully, I was still enjoying the blissful early days of our marriage. Jake's parents live about 20 minutes away from our apartment. His mother, Diane, would often invite us over for dinner, and we'd enjoy a family meal together once a month. Some of my friends expressed concern, asking if visiting my in-laws that frequently was too much. But Jake's dad, Tham, is a great conversationalist, and Diane is quite sweet, so I didn't mind at all. Besides, Diane prefers to handle the kitchen herself, so I was treated like a guest. I would happily join Jake and Tom for a game until dinner was ready, which was easier than cooking at home. However, there was one thing that concerned me. One evening, we were at the in-laws' house for our regular family dinner. When I tasted Diane's chicken soup, I almost groaned aloud. "What's wrong, Mary?" Jake asked, looking at me curiously. "Oh, we never had celery in chicken soup at my parents' house, so I thought it was interesting." "It's delicious, Diane," I replied. "Is it? Thank you. There's plenty more," Diane said, smiling. I struggled to smile back at Diane, who seemed pleased. The soup was incredibly salty, and I wasn't sure I could manage another bowl without raising my blood pressure. I glanced at Jake and Tom, but they were happily enjoying it. This was normal for them. Once again, I forced myself to eat the soup, which had so much sodium it could have dissolved a rock. It seemed my in-laws had a preference for intense flavors. Diane's cooking was sometimes as salty as seawater and at other times as sweet as condensed milk. The first time I tried it, I nearly spat it out. Yet the rest of the family ate it as if it were perfectly normal, and I was astonished by their taste preferences. I felt bad leaving food on my plate, so I usually ate everything, but it was often too much for my stomach to handle. I was worried about the impact such heavily flavored food could have on their health. I consulted with a friend who was a nutritionist and began collecting recipes and pamphlets on healthier cooking. But as a new daughter-in-law, I couldn't exactly say, "Your cooking is too rich in flavor. Please modify your recipes." At home, I cooked meals seasoned according to recipes, thinking that would be more flavorful for Jake. I constantly asked him, "Is it good?" Every time he sweetly replied, "Whatever you cook is delicious." But given his upbringing on such rich food, I doubted he was being entirely honest. Nonetheless, I prioritized our health and continued cooking with normal seasonings. There was another thing that concerned me. Diane sometimes served stale food. The bread on my plate would be dry and hard, and occasionally, dessert would include partially rotten fruit. I discreetly avoided the parts I couldn't eat, but I worried that my in-laws might eventually get food poisoning. One day, Diane offered me some cookies as a snack. However, I noticed they had expired 6 months ago. Jake noticed too and alerted her. "Mom, these cookies are expired." "Oh no, I'm so careless," Diane said, laughing it off. I was relieved she didn't take it seriously, but I was startled when I found the same box of cookies mixed in with a snack bag she gave me during our next visit. I had seen this kind of forgetfulness before when my grandmother developed dementia. What should I do? Diane is only in her 50s, but I began to worry that she might have dementia. I wanted to talk to Jake about his mother's overly seasoned food and her possible signs of dementia, but I was afraid it might be too much for him to handle. Then one day, a small miracle happened to us. I found out I was pregnant. Jake was thrilled. "I'm finally going to be a dad. Is it a boy or a girl?" He would stroke my belly every day with excitement. "When are we going to tell our parents? Should we wait until the end of the first trimester?" "Well, the doctor only just confirmed the heartbeat, but I want to tell them after the 12-week checkup, just in case something happens. I guess we just have to wait and see. I can't wait to tell everyone. I think my mom's gonna cry when she hears the news." "You're right," I said, imagining Diane congratulating me with tears in her eyes. The thought warmed my heart. I was so excited about the long-awaited pregnancy that I had completely pushed my worries to the back of my mind. The following weekend, however, when I saw Diane's chicken soup on the table, I realized there was a big problem. If I ate her over-seasoned food, it might affect my baby. The pregnancy books I've been reading said that high blood pressure and diabetes could negatively impact pregnancy and childbirth. Stale bread and expired foods might be okay for me, but they could harm my baby. The thought made me anxious, and I couldn't bring myself to start eating. "Oh no, Mary, you haven't eaten at all. I hope it's not too bad for your taste," Diane said, looking at my plate with a frown. No, it's not that," I quickly replied. "She's just tired and doesn't have much of an appetite," Jake said, thinking it was morning sickness, and rushed to save me. "I see. Are you working too hard, Mary? Don't push yourself too much," Tom added kindly, but Diane's face remained grim. I felt guilty for leaving the food untouched and for lying to them. After everyone else finished their meal, Diane offered me a large brownie topped with ice cream and a cup of tea. "Have some sweets at least. I'm sure it will relax you." "Thank you so much, Diane," I said. What a thoughtful person. I decided I would at least have a bite, even though I'd been getting heartburn from sweets lately. I noticed that Jake had a smaller piece without ice cream. I whispered to him so Diane wouldn't hear from the kitchen. "Jake, can I switch with yours?" "Huh?" "Oh sure," he said, passing me his plate. I cut a thin piece with my fork. It was moist and soft. I put it in my mouth and washed it down with tea. "Huh? This brownie is a little hard," Jake said as he cut his brownie in half. No. Diane suddenly screamed, bursting out of the kitchen. My heart jumped at her outburst. Jake looked equally puzzled as Diane snatched the brownie from his hand. "Why are you having Mary's brownie? I gave it to her. It doesn't matter who eats it." "Yes, it does. That one is outdated." "What?" Jake exclaimed, shocked. The unexpected revelation left us all silent. Confused by her admission, I asked. That brownie was old. I didn't notice because the ice cream was melting on top. My words didn't help the situation. Instead, they confirmed that there was malice in Diane's actions. In other words, she had tried to disguise the staleness with ice cream. Isn't that right, Mom? Jake asked Diane with chilling calmness. Diane quickly tried to make things right. No, that's not it. It's old, but it's big and still tasty, so I wanted Mary to have it. Then why did you stop me so forcefully from eating it? You gave it to Mary even though you knew it wasn't safe to eat. No way. I finally realized what was happening and a shiver ran down my spine. Have you been feeding me stale food and giving me expired snacks on purpose? I asked, my voice shaking. What? What's going on, honey? Tom glared at Diane like she was a stranger. No, not on purpose. I just happened to have some leftovers and I didn't want to waste them. So I gave them to Mary, Diane said, trying to defend herself. That's what you call on purpose. I can't think of any good reason to make someone else eat bad food that you don't want, Jake said, his anger barely contained. But she's not really our family. She's an outsider, so why not give her the old food, right? Diane continued, her voice dripping with contempt. Mom, I married Mary and became a part of her family too, but I was never treated like that, Jake replied. Diane slammed her hand on the table in panic. As I watched her, my heart sank. The Diane I had loved and admired seemed to vanish before my eyes. I was deeply disappointed, wondering if my positive perception of her had been nothing more than an illusion. I had always believed she was kind and nice. But now, knowing I had been betrayed, she looked like a distressed demon trying to make excuses. Then, another thought crossed my mind. Could all her overly intense food have been on purpose too? What? What are you suggesting? Diane asked, her voice faltering. Tom and Jake exchanged glances. Diane's expression shifted as if she'd been caught red-handed. Jake picked up my bowl of chicken soup. Don't, Jake, Diane cried, but Jake ignored her and took a spoonful. He spat it out immediately. Ew, it's like seawater, he said, grimacing. Tom also tasted the untouched part of my soup and scolded, Mary, have you always been eating food like this? Yes, I thought this was just how it was supposed to taste here since you and Jake were eating it too. That's because ours was normal. I see, Tom said, shaking his head. Jake's shoulders slumped as if all the strength had left him. How could you not realize something was wrong, Mom? It's more than just bad flavor. You've even been giving her expired snacks. I thought she had dementia, I said softly. Diane's mouth twitched with anger. To have a daughter-in-law she despised think she had dementia was a huge insult to her. How pathetic, she muttered. You're so sweet, Mary, Jake said reassuringly. You put up with her because you thought she was sick. Turning to his mother, Jake said, Mom, I can't believe you'd bully such a good person who trusted you. Tom nodded. I never thought Diane was capable of this either. That's why I consulted many people, I explained. I was worried about Diane's health. I thought maybe her taste buds were off and that she might be showing signs of dementia, even though she's only in her 50s. Many people? Diane repeated, alarmed. She hadn't realized her misdeeds had been shared with others. Yes, like my parents, friends, and coworkers. They were all very helpful, giving me tips and pamphlets. I pulled out a stack of pamphlets from my bag and piled them on the table. I had been carrying them around with the intention of talking to Tom and Jake someday. I never thought they'd come in handy this way. Well, you were really worried about her, Tom said, unfolding a pamphlet as if moved by my actions. Of course, Diane was upset. You're terrible. I am not sick. It's you who are terrible, Diane, Tom said. Unlike you, Mary has a pure heart and was sincerely concerned about you. Shut up, Diane shouted, her face twisted with rage. She pointed at me like a demon. I never liked her from the beginning. My beloved son was taken away by a woman like her. Jake's face hardened. Are you calling her dumb? You're the one who failed to see what an amazing woman I married. You were fooled by her, Diane yelled. In front of me, my in-laws had a fierce argument. Knowing Diane hated me was painful, especially because I had trusted her. Why didn't you tell me before the wedding? Jake asked later as we prepared to leave. If I had known, Diane interrupted, her voice hopeful. Jake, if I had known. I would have cut ties, Jake finished, ignoring Diane's despair. He hugged me tightly. I'm sorry, Mary. I didn't realize how much you were going through." "I'm sorry too," I replied. I didn't recognize her intentions. Hideous? Diane's eyes twitched in disbelief. She never expected to be told such a thing by someone she had looked down on. "I married you because you're so pure," Jake said to me. "Don't worry, we'll never come here again." "Wait, you can't." Diane cried out desperately. "You were a terrible mother," Jake said, turning away. "I won't allow you to treat Mary this way. I'll never let you see your child." Diane shrieked, desperation in her voice. "A child, are you?" She began, looking at my belly as if the realization suddenly dawned on her. If she had noticed earlier, when I had no appetite, perhaps things might have turned out differently, but she was too preoccupied with her scheming. "Let's go, Mary," Jake said, taking my hand. "Yeah," I replied, accepting his support and standing up slowly. "Wait, I'm sorry, Jake, it was just a small indiscretion." Diane rushed to grab his arm, but Jake dismissed her and said, "I'm not the one you should be apologizing to." Diane glanced at me, her eyes still full of disdain. I didn't want to forgive someone who so clearly harbored a grudge against me, so I spoke before she could say anything. "I had a lot of trust in you, and you betrayed me. I can't trust you anymore, not for the rest of my life. I can't let someone like you near my precious child. Goodbye." "No." Diane collapsed in anguish as we left without looking back, with Tom witnessing our departure, knowing we would never return. It's strange for me to say this, but if only Diane could have cherished our relationship, she could have enjoyed a happy life as a grandmother, surrounded by her grandchildren. What a fool. Later, when I told my parents and friends who had supported me about what happened, their reactions were mixed. You finally realized, some said, either stunned or relieved. Apparently, everyone but me had been aware of the situation. They didn't tell me because I was genuinely concerned about Diane. They listened and collected pamphlets to help me understand when I was ready. One day, when it all finally dawned on me, I felt ashamed and embarrassed, my face burning with the realization. In fact, thanks to the wealth of information everyone had given me, I was able to prove that my concerns were valid. Because of their support, Jake and Tom were entirely on my side. I realized once again how truly blessed I was by the people around me. About 2 years later, I was busy taking care of our little son. Today was his first birthday, and I was hard at work preparing dishes I wasn't accustomed to making: birthday cake, fried chicken, and more. Jake had been a great dad, playing with our son and changing his diapers. In the middle of it all, I got a call from Tom, who had been invited to the birthday party. I picked up the phone without hesitation, thinking he might have a question for me. "Hello? Mary?" The caller's voice was sickly sweet, not Tom's at all. Even after 2 years, I recognized Diane immediately. After we cut ties, we moved to a new place far from her and only told Tom where we were. I also blocked Diane's phone number and had my number erased from her phone. Thanks to Jake and Tom acting as a shield, she didn't make any unwelcome visits when I gave birth, and I have been able to live a peaceful life. Now, just hearing her voice on the other end of the line gave me goosebumps. "Where's Tom?" I asked sharply. "He's in the bathroom right now," she said, dodging my question. "Hey, isn't it my grandson's birthday today?" I didn't think Tom told her, but she might have noticed him discreetly preparing a gift. Jake sensed something was wrong from my tone of voice. He gestured to take over the phone with a worried look on his face, but I gave him a thumbs up and continued the call. I was too much of a mother now. The innocent, lovely wife was a thing of the past. "Listen, Mary, I truly feel bad about what happened. I was wrong to do those mean things. I really regret it," she said, her voice dripping with feigned sincerity. "Huh. So I want to see my grandson soon. I'll buy him lots of cute clothes and toys, see? Okay, well, I don't need you to hide needles in or above the toys, so, no. Thank you. No, I wouldn't do such a horrible thing. I mean, you're exaggerating. I mean, you fed me all those disgusting things. It wasn't that bad, was it?" It was. Too much salt, sugar, and mold. Any of it could have destroyed my health. But, I mean it, I really regret it. I'm sure you're kind enough to understand. You're right, people often say I'm kind. Yes, you are. But it's not that I'm kind. I'm just naive and trust people too much. If someone betrays me, I will never trust them again. Huh? You'll never gain my trust again. I won't forgive you. I'll never let you see my precious son. Wait, Mary. Diane pleaded. "Hey, what are you doing?" I heard Tom yell in the background, and then the sound of them arguing filled the line. I quietly pressed the end button and turned to Jake. "Sorry about that." "You're getting stronger, Mary," Jake said, sighing in relief. He placed his hands on my shoulders, his touch encouraging. "Of course, I'm his mother." Our son lay content in his crib, and when he saw me, he waved his tiny hands happily. I picked him up and rubbed my cheek against his. His small, soft body felt perfect in my arms, and his mouth had a faint scent of milk. His eyes, full of curiosity, reflected me. The presence of my son filled me with a powerful protective maternal instinct. For my son, I could be an angel or a demon. I had outgrown my role as a gentle but naive wife. "Oh, it smells so good," Jake said, snapping me out of my thoughts. "It's about time the birthday cake was ready in the oven," I replied, smiling as our innocent son cooed happily in response. Back then, I was oblivious to the malice of others, carefree and happy, but that was only because of the people who protected me. Now it was my turn to protect my family. I was determined to grow stronger and stronger, so that these happy days would continue for a long time.
Mel got really upset at my baby shower. She insulted me and tried to name my baby, but things got out of control and she ended up getting arrested. I'm 29, married to my amazing husband, Gary, and we're expecting our first child. Gary and I have been together for a long time, got married 4 years ago, and we've been trying to have a baby since last year. We were overjoyed when we found out about my pregnancy 6 months ago. We faced life's ups and downs together, and the news of our little one has brought so much happiness to our relationship. Every day brings us closer to meeting our baby, and we can't wait. Pregnancy has been a mix of emotions, from the excitement of finding out to feeling the baby kick. Gary has been my support through it all, attending every doctor's appointment, reading parenting books with me, and helping set up the nursery. We're fully in baby mode now, discussing names, decorating the nursery, and making plans for the future. Gary is thrilled to be a dad, and his enthusiasm warms my heart. We're sharing the preparations for the baby and facing the challenges and fun parts of pregnancy together, enjoying every moment. 2 months ago, we decided it was time to share the exciting news with our family. After making sure we passed the crucial first trimester, we invited our parents, close family, and friends for lunch. They were expecting a regular lunch, but when they noticed my growing stomach, their expressions changed to joy and amazement. My mother even started crying when she saw me and confirmed the pregnancy. My mom understood why we kept the pregnancy a secret and was happy to be a grandmother soon. However, Gary's mom, Barbara, had a different reaction. Instead of sharing our joy, she got angry when she found out we kept the pregnancy hidden. She felt left out and accused me of excluding her on purpose. Even though I tried to explain, she stayed mad and wouldn't talk to me. This put a damper on what should have been a joyful family occasion. Throughout the night, Barbara ignored me and even disrespected my mom, who had always been kind to her before. Barbara seemed upset, buried in her phone while everyone else talked. She openly told everyone how she had no idea about my pregnancy, making her feel like she missed out on time with a grandchild who wasn't even born yet. My husband and his brother noticed Barbara's frustration, and as tension grew, I reached a breaking point. I stepped out to gather myself, and my mom comforted me until I could return. At the end of the night, Barbara made a point of saying goodbye to me last, barely exchanging more than a quick greeting. Later, my husband walked them to the car, where they had a loud argument that I could hear from the foyer. Barbara used the opportunity to complain about me, making the situation even stranger. Luckily, all our guests had left by then. It was just my parents, Gary, and his parents left. Barbara angrily confronted Gary, expressing disbelief that I had the audacity to keep the pregnancy a secret from her, claiming I didn't consider her family. My husband calmly explained that we waited until it was safe to share the news, but Barbara started yelling. Their conversation went like this. Barbara, this is our grandchild. I deserve to know from the beginning. Gary, Mom, it's not about deserving. It was a decision we made together. We wanted to be cautious. Barbara, cautious? I am her mother-in-law. She should have trusted me. This is all her fault. My husband lost his temper, telling his mother it was their decision. And if she blamed me, she should blame him too. He asked her to stop attacking me and leave to cool off. Barbara stormed away, leaving my husband visibly frustrated and disappointed. I didn't realize tears were streaming down my face. Gary comforted me and guided me back inside. My parents stayed back, sensing the tension until I felt composed. Barbara didn't stop there. Later that night, I got a message from her. Anxiously, I read it, and it said, I must say I am deeply disappointed in you. You knowingly kept a significant piece of information from me, and I find it absolutely unforgivable. I can't believe you would rob me of the joy of knowing about my grandchild from the very beginning. This is not how a family should operate, and I find it disrespectful and hurtful. Instead of apologizing for your immature action, you are causing a divide between me and my son. Shame on you. Her words cut through me, and I felt a mix of anger and hurt. I showed the message to Gary, and he was furious. He couldn't understand why his mother would react so negatively and blame me. Gary decided to call her, warning her not to send such negative messages, as it might distress me further. He even threatened to cut her off if this behavior continued. Gary's words and angry tones seemed to have an impact on Barbara. Faced with the possibility of being cut off, she changed her tune. Instead of acknowledging her own role in the conflict, she proposed a solution. She claimed the only way she could forgive us was if we allowed her to throw us a baby shower. This sudden turn of events left us surprised and skeptical about her motives. She pleaded how nothing would bring her more joy than to throw a grand celebration for me and her grandchild, taking care of everything. Gary looked at me curiously, but I remained skeptical. Barbara's sudden change of heart seemed more like a tactical move to regain control and assert her dominance, rather than a genuine attempt at reconciliation. Despite my reservations, Gary, always wanting to find a middle ground and keep the peace, entertained the idea of accepting her offer. I expressed my concerns to Gary, stressing that accepting her offer might only fuel her belief that her behavior was acceptable. Gary understood my perspective but hoped that allowing his mother to throw a baby shower could be a way for us to mend fences before the baby arrived. I reluctantly agreed, and Gary informed his mother to go ahead with the planning for my baby shower. She was overjoyed and expressed her gratitude for allowing her to take charge. Despite entrusting her with this responsibility, I assumed there would be some level of collaboration where she would seek my input and consider my preferences for my own baby shower, with the event still a month away. I expected more detailed planning for my baby shower in the coming week. To my dismay, my mother-in-law went rogue, taking charge of everything without consulting anyone, including me. When my mom tried to discuss the baby shower with her, my mother-in-law simply said everything had been decided, and it would be a surprise for me. The lack of communication and consideration left me feeling disheartened and frustrated. On the day of my baby shower, the air was filled with a mix of excitement and tension. I arrived at the venue, a local banquet hall, surrounded by close friends eager to celebrate our upcoming little one. However, I couldn't help but notice the outrageous decorations my mother-in-law had chosen. A sea of brown and beige balloons, creating a theme that was entirely her creation. I absolutely hated the decoration. It looked like a misguided attempt at a safari theme gone wrong. The overwhelming presence of brown and beige clashed with the vibrant atmosphere I had envisioned. I had imagined soft pastels and delicate touches, but my mother-in-law had gone the opposite way. Tension escalated when I saw an eye-catching display near the entrance, an enormous banner featuring an elaborate collage of my husband's baby pictures with Barbara. Everyone looked confused, wondering why she chose to display my husband's baby pictures during my baby shower. She laughed it off, saying she expected our baby to look exactly like my husband, and she was proud of how cute he was as a child. I stared at her, trying to comprehend if she had lost her mind. It was clear she was determined to make the day more about her experiences as a mother than about the imminent addition to our family. As more guests arrived, their expressions ranged from confusion to polite discomfort. Looking around the room, the sea of brown and beige balloons, coupled with the towering banner showcasing my mother-in-law and my husband, created an ambience far from the elegant and joyous atmosphere I had envisioned for my baby shower. I exchanged apologetic glances with some of my friends who clearly shared my sentiment. When my mother walked in, her eyes widened in shock as she observed the horror my mother-in-law had unleashed upon the venue. Her eyes then locked onto the banner, and I could sense her disbelief at the audacity of showcasing a college that seemed more like an exhibition of my husband's childhood. In a bold move, my mother walked over to the banner. Her expression shifted from disbelief to determination. Without uttering a word, she firmly grabbed hold of the banner, decisively removing it from its prominent display. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned toward my mother as she carried away the intrusive display that overshadowed the celebration. I couldn't help but feel a surge of gratitude toward my mother for her unwavering support. My mother-in-law, who was busy talking to other guests, looked in horror as my mother threw the banner into the dustbin. In a disapproving tone, she asked what my mother thought she was doing, insisting the banner was a special touch to celebrate the baby and the family. Undeterred by the disapproval, my mother responded with a firm yet composed voice, asserting that the celebration was about me and my baby, not a showcase of my mother-in-law's personal achievements. The guests around them were drawn to this unexpected confrontation. Undeterred by the disapproval, my mother responded with a firm yet composed voice, asserting that the celebration was about me and my baby, not a showcase of my mother-in-law's personal achievements. The guests around them were drawn to this unexpected confrontation. My mother-in-law, sensing the attention shift, tried to regain control of the situation, explaining she thought it would be nice for everyone to know who was responsible for the event's beauty. She wanted everyone to see how cute Gary was as a child. However, my mother continued, reminding her that she begged me to allow her to throw the baby shower, and that it wasn't a platform for her personal agenda or an attempt to steal the spotlight. The room hushed as the exchange unfolded, with guests glancing at each other uncomfortably. Realizing her attempt to dictate the narrative had backfired, my mother-in-law retreated with a forced smile and returned to her conversations with other guests. Despite the tension lingering throughout the event, the baby shower continued, with me trying my best to focus on the positive energy for my friends and family. I thought there wouldn't be any more surprises from my mother-in-law, who seemed to be drinking a bit too much for a baby shower. We played various party games, and the guests were slowly starting to enjoy themselves. Then came the gift opening session, and everyone's thoughtful gifts for my baby were pleasant surprises. However, my anticipation turned to bewilderment when my mother-in-law handed me a conspicuously large gift box with an exaggerated smile. The room fell silent, and I felt a mixture of embarrassment and frustration. My mother looked at her angrily, and the guests exchanged awkward glances, unsure of how to react. Trying to diffuse the tension, I mustered a weak smile and thanked her for the thoughtful gift, suppressing the urge to roll my eyes. The situation escalated during the cake-cutting ceremony. My mother-in-law had ordered an extravagant tiered cake with over-the-top decorations. She made a big show of it, clinking her glass to make everyone look at her. Wondering what she was up to, we all looked at her curiously and waited for her to speak. Barbara then announced that she had come up with the perfect name for our baby girl. Keep in mind, we hadn't even settled on a name ourselves. She proudly declared that the baby would be named after her great-grandmother, with a name that seemed straight out of a Victorian novel. I was shocked and a little irritated that she assumed she had the naming rights. I stepped in politely, explaining that my husband and I wanted to pick our baby's name together. It was a decision we wanted to make as parents. However, my mother-in-law wasn't having any of it. She insisted she had the perfect name, and if I were a good daughter-in-law, I should accept it, given the money she had spent on the baby shower. I was shocked at her sense of entitlement. I firmly stated that only my husband and I had the right to name our baby. Regardless of who hosted the baby shower, this decision was ours alone. That's when my mother-in-law started yelling at me in front of everyone, claiming, I found myself in an extremely difficult situation as my mother-in-law, Barbara, became increasingly aggressive and disrespectful at my baby shower. She insisted that she should have the right to name my baby and criticized my upbringing, claiming I should be thanking her instead of denying her this supposed right. Barbara grew more and more aggressive, pointing her fingers at my face. My mother stepped in as a shield, but Barbara continued to shout, asserting herself as the actual mommy of my baby, claiming that she gave birth to my husband and it was his sperm that impregnated me. Her words were truly disgusting. Despite my mother's attempts to stop Barbara's nasty comments, she just got angrier, insulting me and claiming my mom did a terrible job raising me. It was clear she had too much to drink, and trying to talk sense into her was pointless. The situation was getting worse, making everyone uncomfortable. Realizing the escalating situation, I decided I had endured enough humiliation. Trying to salvage some dignity, I walked out with the gifts my friends had generously brought, leaving behind the present my mother-in-law had given me. However, in her intoxicated state, Barbara snatched the gifts back from my hand and tossed them to the ground, accusing me of being ungrateful and a witch who was coming between her and her son. The tense atmosphere drew more attention, and I noticed some people starting to film the incident. To contain the chaos, I asked one of my close friends to politely request people to leave the event. Undeterred, Barbara continued hurling nasty accusations, creating a scene that no one could have anticipated. Frustration turned to anger, and as a last resort, I decided to call the police to remove her from my vicinity, as I was starting to feel extremely unsafe with her aggressive behavior. Yes, you read that right. I had to involve the police at my own baby shower because of my toxic mother-in-law. When the officers showed up, Barbara went into full drama mode, pointing fingers at me and painting me as the mastermind behind the chaotic event. The cops, thankfully understanding, attempted to reason with her. However, being drunk, she resisted their efforts and even started yelling at the police, which didn't work in her favor. The situation escalated to the point where she was arrested on the spot. I left the event with my mother and close friends, all of us shaken up by the unsettling incident. Since this incident, my husband and I have been dealing with the fallout. My mother-in-law is on a full-blown guilt trip, playing the victim card and garnering sympathy from some family members who were not present at the baby shower because they don't live in the same city. My husband, although he understands why I called the cops, thinks I took it a bit too far. He believes that I could have called him or his father for help. So Reddit, am I wrong for calling the cops on my mother-in-law for ruining my baby shower and pretending to be the actual mommy of the baby? Update 1. I am overwhelmed with the response I have received since deciding to post about my baby shower. I would like to thank everyone for supporting my decision to call the cops. I had never witnessed such an aggressive reaction from my mother-in-law before, and the level of aggression she displayed at the baby shower left me genuinely concerned about the possibility of physical harm, especially considering the potential impact on my unborn child. Since the incident, every guest who attended the baby shower has reached out to express their support. Some of them have even shared recordings of the entire debacle, which I intend to show to my husband. My plan is to have a serious conversation with him in the coming weekend about the future with his mother. Update 2. I showed the recording to my husband. As mentioned earlier, my husband and I found ourselves sitting down for a serious conversation about the events that had transpired. I explained to him in detail how his mother's behavior had escalated throughout the entire ordeal, from the hidden pregnancy revelation to the outrageous baby shower. I described in detail the yelling, accusations, and bizarre gifts she presented. I then shared the recordings with him, which he watched visibly horrified. Watching the videos seemed to bring a reality check for him, making him confront the uncomfortable truth about his mother's actions. He started to sincerely apologize to me for underestimating the severity of the situation and acknowledged that I was right in calling the cops. I had no idea they had gotten this bad. I'm so sorry you had to go through all that, he expressed, his face reflecting both regret and frustration. He admitted that he had never imagined his mother could be this toxic, as this behavior seemed so out of character for her. He reassured me that he was on my side and emphasized that my safety and well-being, especially during pregnancy, were his top priorities. We then delved into the underlying issues, discussing how his mother's need for control and validation had overshadowed what should have been a joyous occasion. Gary, grappling with the reality of his mother's actions, shared his own concerns about her behavior and acknowledged that she had crossed a line. I told him that after how his mother had behaved with me in front of everyone, I wanted to cut all ties with her. I continued to tell him that he could have a relationship with her if he wanted, but me and our child would not be a part of her life, at least until his mother went for counseling to deal with her aggressive behavior. Hearing this, Gary expressed that what his mother had done was beyond disgusting, and he was willing to cut ties with her as well. I assured him that he did not have to do any such thing, but my husband insisted that his mother had disrespected me and therefore did not have the right to be in our lives anymore. He understood that his mother's behavior was not just about the baby shower, but might have been a culmination of long-standing issues. Moving ahead, Gary has reassured me that he will personally communicate our decision to his mother, making it clear that cutting her off from our lives is entirely his choice. I have also asked him to warn her that if she decides to show up unexpectedly at our doorstep to force me to accept her back into our lives, then I will be forced to call the cops on her again. Update 3. It's been a month since my last update. To everyone asking, me and the baby are doing okay. I can't wait to meet my child very soon as the date approaches. Since my last update, we have ceased all communication with Barbara. Gary had a conversation with his parents, and his father assured him that he would take the necessary steps to ensure that my mother-in-law understands the boundaries we've set and respects our decision. In the aftermath of cutting ties with Barbara, our lives have experienced a noticeable shift. The absence of constant drama and toxicity has brought about a newfound sense of peace and tranquility in our household. Gary and I are now able to focus on preparing for the arrival of our baby without the looming cloud of Barbara's disruptions. The support we receive from friends and family has been invaluable during this challenging time. My parents and my close friends have been pillars of strength, offering their encouragement and understanding. Even some family members who were initially unaware of the extent of Barbara's behavior have come forward to express their support after witnessing the shocking events at the baby shower through the viral videos. Our journey is far from over, but this experience has strengthened our bond and highlighted the importance of facing challenges together as a united front. The decision to sever ties with Barbara was not made lightly, but it has proven to be a necessary step for our well-being. While there may be lingering challenges, we are optimistic about the positive changes this choice has brought into our lives. As we eagerly await the arrival of our little one, we are determined to build a loving and supportive family environment that prioritizes the well-being of both parents and child.
Effie, my mother-in-law, told me that if I didn't go on the trip she planned, I wouldn't be considered part of the family anymore because I married her son, Cody. She wanted Cody to agree with her. I stopped Cody from saying anything and agreed to go on the trip to avoid conflict. Effie said marrying someone like me, who she thought was inexperienced, was a hassle. She warned that if I didn't come, she would consider divorcing Cody and would teach me things her way. I was fed up with her rude comments. Little did I know, this trip would be the last one with my in-laws. My name is Liliana, and I'm 32 years old. I own a small app development company, which I really enjoy. My husband, Cody, is 37, and he works at a bank. We both love our jobs and often talk about them for hours. Cody understands and supports my work, and we share household chores. Even though we've been married for 4 years, we don't have children yet because we're focused on our careers. But we both like kids and hope to have some in the future. My family owns an auto parts factory that my dad started, and now my brother runs it. They've been very supportive of my dream to start my own company, even though our businesses are different. I often seek advice from my dad and brother, who are also business owners. They've always been there for me, so my family is a big support in my life. Cody's family owns a small factory, and since he was their only child, they expected him to take over one day. But Cody had different plans. The factory wasn't doing well, and his dad, Andy, was thinking about closing it down. Running a small factory is tough these days. When Cody was young, he often overheard his dad talking to bankers on the phone. He even met a friendly banker during a visit to the factory and started going to the bank with his dad just to see him. That's how he got interested in banking. Cody worked hard to make his dream of becoming a banker come true, and now he works at a big bank. Even though everything might seem okay between Cody and me, our marriage isn't going well. Cody's mom, Effie, doesn't think highly of my job. I can work from home sometimes because my job allows it, but Effie sees it as a pointless job and doesn't understand it at all. I get it. It's hard for our parents' generation to understand jobs like mine. Even though my job isn't physically demanding, it's still tiring. I always adjust my work schedule around Cody's family's plans so I don't bother them. I don't expect them to get it, but it's frustrating when they think working from home is easy just because my schedule is flexible. Effie disapproves of other things about us too. When we got married, we built our own house between our parents' homes. It takes less than 30 minutes to get to either house. We both work and manage our money separately. We like having our own space and privacy, even as a couple. We each contribute a set amount of money for household expenses every month and save the rest for our future. But Effie doesn't like this lifestyle either. She thinks it's wrong for a couple to keep things private. According to her, family members shouldn't have secrets, and she doesn't think we're a real family because of it. Effie seems to have a problem with me, probably because she really likes her son Cody, and I'm just in her way. Whenever we see each other, she makes mean comments about us not having kids yet. It's a sensitive topic for me, and I'd rather not talk about it. Normally, people avoid bringing up things like that, but Effie keeps mentioning it every time we meet. So, to avoid upsetting Cody, I've been staying late at work on purpose to miss seeing her. Effie has done other surprising things too, but one thing she did really upset me. It was on the day of my best friend's wedding. After the wedding, my friend was moving far away, so we wouldn't see each other as much because of our jobs. I was really excited to celebrate her special day, but a week before the wedding, Andy asked me to go to an important business event. I said no. The only thing more important to me than my friend's wedding would be if a parent was really sick. But that night, something unexpected happened. When I got home from work, my in-laws were at our house. As soon as she saw me, Effie got really mad. "Liliana, what's wrong with you? Saying no to Andy's request is rude. You're married to my son, so you should put family first. Your refusal is not okay. You need to think about what's important," she yelled at me. Cody was there too, but he didn't say anything. After finding out that the reception Andy asked me to attend was crucial for the future of the company, I understood the seriousness of the situation. But to me, my best friend's wedding was just as important. I explained to Effie, "I get what you're saying, but my best friend's wedding means a lot to me, and I don't want to miss it. Plus, I don't even work for Andy's company." Even Cody joined in, saying, "Can't you make an exception this time? This is really important for the company's survival." "I'm going to, and it's a family effort. We can make it up to you for missing the wedding. It's a family crisis. Can't you help us?" I was shocked to hear Cody say that. He knew how excited I was about the wedding. Then Andy added, "I understand Liliana's perspective, but this time we really need your help." The atmosphere made it hard for me to refuse. It wasn't just any reception. In the end, I reluctantly agreed to skip my best friend's wedding. I told my friend the truth and explained why I couldn't come. Thankfully, since I had talked to my best friend about my family situation before, she understood. In fact, she was more worried about me. I'm lucky to have such a caring friend. I felt really bad about missing my friend's wedding. But once I made the decision, I had to focus on making the reception a success. On the day of the event, Cody and I got to the venue early and tried to reach Effie, but she didn't pick up her phone for some reason. I started to worry about what to do, but finally, the in-laws showed up just 10 minutes before the reception was supposed to start. I was surprised to see them looking so messy, with untidy hair and wrinkled clothes. I was shocked and asked Effie, "What happened? Why do you look like this? Today's reception is important, isn't it?" She awkwardly replied, "I overslept, Liliana. Just make sure you behave yourself." I was really tempted to snap back with, "I don't need advice from you," but somehow, I managed to keep my cool. I have to give myself credit for staying calm during the reception. Effie, not great at talking politely, made a bunch of rude comments to our guests. She probably thought they were jokes, but their uncomfortable smiles showed they didn't find them funny. As I expected, we didn't get the contract we were hoping for, and the reception was a flop. I couldn't help but think I should have gone to my best friend's wedding instead. I was really angry that I got dragged into such a disaster, messing up my plans and causing problems with the in-laws. What made it worse was that they didn't admit they did anything wrong. They acted like it was the guests' fault for not sealing the deal after such a fancy reception. They said it was a good thing we didn't make a deal with such odd people. I couldn't believe how clueless they were. After that mess, I felt even more uncomfortable around my in-laws and started avoiding them. But there's one thing I can't get out of. Cody's family has this tradition of going on a family trip every year since he was a kid, and they still do it even though we're married now. Since we got married, I've been expected to join these trips, but I always end up doing all the boring stuff: driving, booking hotels, researching places to visit. If I try to say anything about it, I'm shut down with a "don't push it." Even when we visit tourist spots, I often end up staying in a hotel room, missing out on places I'd like to see. Honestly, I really don't look forward to these yearly family trips and secretly hope I might get sick and avoid them. But now, it's time for this year's trip, and despite saying they're short on money, my in-laws insist on a fancy trip like always. They put me in charge of finding a hotel. I planned everything carefully to keep Effie happy since she's always grumbling. Since I don't drink, I'm always the one who ends up driving. But I don't mind because it means I don't have to listen to their conversations. But just before the trip, a crisis hit. I got a call saying my mom had collapsed and was in bad shape. With that news, going on the trip, even for a short while, wasn't an option. I panicked, knowing I needed to see my mom right away. Since it was the day before the trip, I decided to cancel and get ready to go to the hospital. Cody offered to come with me to the hospital, but I said no. It felt like he was suggesting my mom might not make it, and I didn't want to hear that. When Cody and I told Effie we couldn't go on the trip, she got really mad. Effie's words hit me like a ton of bricks. "You're saying you can't go on the trip I planned? If you don't come, you're no longer family. As my son's wife, it's common sense to prioritize the family trip, right?" "Right, Cody," she said, expecting Cody to agree. Cody seemed like he wanted to say something, but Effie cut him off, making it clear she didn't want to hear any objections. I was so shocked that I couldn't even respond. Being with my mom in her critical condition was the only thing on my mind. Just as I was trying to figure out what to say, my brother called. He told me that mom's condition was serious but somewhat stable. I wanted to rush to her side, but he explained that due to a contagious disease outbreak, visiting wasn't possible right now. He said we could arrange a short visit later as she gets better. So there was no urgent need for me to go. Hearing this news left me feeling torn about what to do. Seeing my hesitation, my brother asked what was going on. I explained everything about the trip and my dilemma. My brother, a little annoyed, suggested something helpful that I hadn't thought of in the midst of my distress. The trip was going to a place near my parents' house, which my brother assured me would be easy to reach from a hotel if necessary. He was right. Whether I stayed at home or in the hotel, I could quickly get to my family if needed. Taking my brother's advice, I reluctantly told Effie, "Okay, I'll come on the trip." Effie responded, "Well, if you'd said that earlier, I wouldn't have gotten so upset. Marrying someone so inexperienced is tough. Just remember, if you don't come, it's divorce. I might have to teach you a few things." Cody seemed surprised, but we agreed to go, with the condition that I could leave for the hospital if necessary. Effie commented, "It'd be a problem if our driver disappeared suddenly, wouldn't it? Good, you're part of the family now, so our needs come first. Remember your role as my son's wife. This trip is a big deal. It should be your priority." Her smug attitude and obvious excitement annoyed me, but I decided to put up with it to avoid more trouble. On the day of the trip, I was so worried about my mom that I couldn't stop checking my phone. Meanwhile, Effie was already drinking beer in the morning. As I drove, the back seat of my car turned into a party scene, with Cody surprising me by joining in the drinking. Even though it was unexpected, I reminded myself that everyone had rearranged their schedules for this trip. I thought it would be nice if everyone could enjoy themselves since we all made an effort to be here. During the trip, Effie's demands were constant, urgently needing bathroom stops or wanting to stop for more alcohol. I felt like I was being treated as a servant, but I decided to endure it. Then my phone rang. It was my brother, thankfully informing me that Mom had survived. Her condition had stabilized and she had regained consciousness. The diagnosis was a subarachnoid hemorrhage. However, I couldn't fully relax yet. There were worries about potential aftereffects. It was comforting to have my brother keeping me updated as I was feeling anxious. When I shared the news of Mom's recovery with my in-laws, Effie dismissed it, saying, "If she's better, there's no need to bother us with such news. You're making a big deal out of nothing." Andy agreed, saying, "Exactly. Let's not spoil our trip with such grim news. We're here to have fun." I was disgusted that Andy shared Effie's view and didn't want to think of these people as my family. During the trip, they made a lot of noise in the hotel, drinking and partying, which was embarrassing. This incident deepened my distrust of my in-laws. Thankfully, Mom's condition remained stable, and there was no need to rush to the hospital, allowing us to finish the trip and return home. I felt relieved. While I was doing laundry at home, Effie showed up unexpectedly. She asked to use our dryer because they didn't have one. I was annoyed and told her, "There's a laundromat with dryers. I have my own laundry to do, and I'm using it right now, so it's not possible." But she insisted, saying, "You're always so stingy. Once you're done, it's fine. I'll come pick it up tomorrow. Have it ready by then," and tried to leave her laundry in our washroom. Cody stepped in, saying, "Liliana is tired and has work tomorrow. It's not possible for her to help with the laundry. Let's go to a laundromat." Effie got angry, feeling like her son was taking my side. She left in a hurry, leaving the laundry behind and hurling insults as she slammed the door. Looking back, maybe if things had been different that day, the outcome might have changed. Later, Effie returned and said something unexpected. She told me, "During the trip, I noticed something, Liliana. You seem unaware of being married to Cody. We might face similar situations in the future. Since we couldn't talk about it, I've decided that Liliana should make a decision." Then she placed a family contract and divorce papers on the table. I was speechless. What on earth was a family contract? It seemed ridiculous and confirmed my belief that she couldn't have a normal conversation. But Cody surprised me with his response. He said, "I have something to say. If you keep forcing your opinions on us, I'll cut ties. I can't deal with this anymore." "What do you think, Liliana? You're not a servant or housekeeper. You're not the one who's mistaken about your position." Effie was stunned. Up until now, Cody rarely spoke up against her. It wasn't because he agreed with her, but because he wanted to avoid conflict. After Cody spoke, Effie's anger turned towards me. "You've changed Cody since you married him. He used to be so sweet. It's crazy for him to talk to me like that." "You must have brainwashed him, turned him back into the old Cody," she accused, confronting me. She believed I had manipulated Cody into defying her. Then, Cody defended me even more. "You're the one doing the brainwashing here. You always fly off the handle without listening to anyone's opinions. Honestly, you're a toxic parent. You never let me live my own life after I got married. Instead of calming down, you're attacking Liliana. Enough is enough. I'm not going to divorce, and if you have a problem, you should stay out of our lives," he firmly stated. Effie turned to Andy, who was there, and burst into tears. Andy responded, "If that's what Cody thinks, then so be it. We'll cut ties. Do as you wish," and left in a huff. I was surprised but relieved that Cody stood up for us like that. Feeling frustrated, I confided in my brother about everything. He became furious and said he couldn't stay silent if they were behaving this way. He decided to take action, which ultimately led to a tragedy in the in-laws' family. It turned out that my brother's company was a client of my in-laws' company. We had kept our family's company name a secret to avoid creating a power imbalance. The in-laws had no idea they were dealing with my family's company, but with things as they were, we couldn't continue like this. Although I had been patient and avoided mixing business and personal matters, it had reached its limit. My brother had been having issues with them not meeting deadlines. "You can't cherish those who don't cherish you." I discussed it with Cody before talking to the in-laws, and he agreed. Cody also said he had had enough. My brother decided to end the contract with my in-laws' company purely as a business decision. Their company had become problematic, consistently failing to pay on time and missing deadlines. Despite these issues, we had tolerated it because of the family connection. But now there was no reason to continue. When my in-laws learned about this, They came to us in tears, constantly apologizing. They begged my brother to reconsider the contract, but it was out of the question. Their failure to meet deadlines was their own responsibility, and they should have appreciated our patience. Cody explained everything to his parents, but they refused to accept it and ultimately cut ties in anger. Cody wasn't upset. He felt relieved. He had been torn and exhausted, caught between us and his family. Since then, we've been living peacefully. I discovered that Cody had been financially supporting his family, but he stopped doing that now. Even before this incident, their family factory was struggling and was close to shutting down due to debts. I also found out that Cody had been paying for those yearly trips for his family. It's surprising how they could act that way, using someone else's money. Now, Cody's parents are living more modestly, and Effie has started working recently. It's quite unexpected to see her, who used to consider herself a president's wife, now working. One day, I witnessed Effie being reprimanded while doing a cleaning job. Although I initially felt it might be karma, I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. Perhaps through this experience, she'll learn about the realities of life and hopefully change for the better. As for us, work is going smoothly. We haven't had children yet, but we're content with our jobs and life feels fulfilling. We're planning a trip abroad for our next vacation. For now, we're enjoying life without the added responsibility of children.